For 20 years, the Miami Heat has been a staple in the South Florida community. It was a franchise built from scratch.
Something big was happening in Miami.
4 men had one dream.
If it wasn't for Ted Arison's money and commitment to Miami, there wouldn't be a Heat.
It was a dream that caught fire.
The Miami Heat select Ron Seikaly.
Sparked by a tenacious young team.
Let's go now!
Relive a spectacular opening night.
It was sold out. People loved it. It was a place to be seen.
Miami's newest franchise was embraced by the city, and even though they struggled out of the gate, the fans never left their side.
It was the true honeymoon period.
Step into a time machine and get an exclusive look into Miami Heat's inaugural season.
2 seconds, 1 second. Sparrow jumps out on its way. Sparrow got it! Miami wins!
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Inside the Heat. I'm Eric Reed. This 2007-2008 season marks the 20th anniversary of the Miami Heat. So this is our opportunity to honor and reflect on 2 decades of Heat basketball and tell the story of how a professional basketball team helped rejuvenate a city. Where do we begin? How about before it all came true? Long before there was Shaq and Wade, there was a dream of what downtown Miami could be and how the NBA could help make that happen. There were men with vision and passion who made sure it did. One man mattered more than all the rest. Ted Arison. He will always be the patriarch of the organization, for without him, the Miami Heat may not have happened.
In the early 1980s, Miami was a very different city than it is today. It was a city in transition, looking to restore its reputation and reinvent itself. At that time, the lifestyle of South Florida, for better and for worse, was depicted nationally on television. A hot place to be for a tourist, but if you lived here and were a sports fan, your local options were limited.
Miami was a one-sport town.
It was all about the Dolphins. I mean, and it was the only team that was here.
It was really a sports drought that we were having.
The buzz had started several times about bringing an NBA franchise.
The Miami Sports and Exhibition Authority started a committee of people to help us get an NBA franchise, and I was chairman of the committee, and we went up to New York, and we petitioned the league for a team, and they told us to come back when we found some rich guy who could afford to buy it. So we found Ted Arison.
By 1986, 4 men, 2 from Tel Aviv and 2 from Brooklyn, had stepped to the forefront and eventually made Miami's NBA dream a reality.
You remember the story.
Ted Arison was a devout philanthropist to the city of Miami and cared immensely about its growth. The founder of Carnival Cruise Lines was recruited by fellow Tel Aviv native Zev Buffman to be a part of the ownership group.
If you want to talk about a person who was a visionary, it was Ted.
He was sold on what professional basketball could do to help embellish Miami as a first-class city. And, you know, he took that chance and did it.
A good friend of Ted Arison, Zev Buffman, was responsible for bringing the ownership group together. Zev was a vibrant and extroverted man who produced award-winning Broadway shows.
The rewards of being involved in a sports team are so enormous. They're bigger than any Broadway show, than any 5 Broadway shows I've ever experienced in my whole life.
The first showman was Zev Buffman, who was behind this movement to bring NBA basketball to South Florida.
It was Billy Cunningham that brought basketball credibility to this ownership foursome. Elected to the Hall of Fame in 1986, 10 years later, he was named one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history.
I wouldn't be sitting here with Zev Buffman if I hadn't made a commitment, and I know Zev has, is to do whatever in our power to get that NBA franchise here.
The fourth piece of the ownership group was Louis Chaffel, a lifelong friend of Billy Cunningham. He had previous experience in running an NBA franchise.
As we all know, Louis was a very tough negotiator. He was a very brilliant businessman.
Things just don't happen because of one man or one entity. It's a groundswell of interest that comes about, and everybody wants it.
Something big was happening in Miami, something big in terms of the revitalization of the city.
On August 4th, 1986, ground was broken for the Miami Arena in the heart of Overtown. The choice of Overtown for the Miami Arena was a defining moment in the Magic City's future.
It was a precondition to getting a franchise to have plans in place and financing and the design.
With building plans in place, it was time to take action.
We had to go to the Board of Governors meeting in Arizona and make our formal application, and we took Ted with us.
I was the one designated to tell Ted, and I said, "Congratulations, Ted, there's good news all around." He said, "Well, what's that?" I said, "Well, you are surely going to be an investor as Miami gets an NBA franchise, and it's been granted. And number two, you have to be the lead investor and the majority investor," which was not his intention at all.
After we made our presentation, Ted came out and we all got in the elevator after that, and he's laughing. And I said, "Ted, what are you laughing about?" And he said, "I don't even like basketball."
I'm not sure he wanted to own a basketball franchise. He was not really a sports fan and not really that interested, but he did it more for community interest than anything else.
If it wasn't for Ted Arrison's money and commitment to Miami, you wouldn't be there. There wouldn't be a Heat.
The first two teams will be Charlotte, North Carolina, and Miami, Florida.
I will never forget Billy Cunningham and Lou Chaffel running out of this hotel going, "We have the team."
The Heat come here, and all of a sudden, we became Major League.
With the guarantee of an NBA team, the building of the arena downtown would come to fruition.
It's real now. They're building something, and it's the old "if they build it, they will come" kind of thing. You finally felt, okay, there's an arena.
You have the redevelopment of the city and having the Heat come down there. I mean, and being a city, it makes it really special.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat, a special look back at 20 years of Miami Heat basketball. Once the franchise was awarded in 1987, the NBA mandated that there be a minimum of 10,000 season ticket holders. Pauline Winnick, one of the first vice presidents of the new franchise, played a major role in that task and in the startup of Miami's new NBA organization.
The hallmark of the first 2 years of getting that ball in the air, that we were a group of people, none of whom had any experience in starting a franchise.
Jeff Craney was among the first of the young and ambitious original employees hired to build a new NBA franchise.
The Heat office was one person with one desk. And you kind of walk into this one little room office, one little desk, and this lady sitting behind there. I said, "Hi, I'm Jeff. I could use an internship to graduate." She said, "You're hired."
There were maybe 8, 10 of us at the time.
We had a lot of people that had never done whatever job they were in before, so everybody was, really learning on the fly.
Everybody did multiple tasking, and that was the nature of the job.
In December of 1987, a check from the Latin Builders Association for 200 season tickets put the franchise over the 10,000 mark.
Wow, we're going to be able to get to see Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and all these great NBA greats are going to be coming into our backyard.
With an arena finally built and fans on board, a contest was then held for a team name and logo.
Manatees, tropicals, tornadoes, a heat wave. Just some of the names that stick out, but Heat came through as the name that we all more identified with because of the area geographically.
So the name had already been chosen. The logo was still up for grabs.
I can remember being as an intern, there being a ton of entries about the logo. Basketball with sunglasses, seemed to be the biggest thing.
But I remember walking into Ted's office with some 2 managing partners, and Ted looked at the assortment of logos, and he said, "That's the one." And he picked the logo that is the current logo.
As the franchise gained momentum, it was time to begin building a basketball team. To lead that process, the Heat hired Stu Inman, an 18-year veteran in the NBA, to be its first director of player personnel.
We would like to get a couple of men who were veterans, who were exceptional people.
They also brought in Ron Rothstein as the franchise's first head coach.
Okay.
Rothstein was a longtime assistant coach under Chuck Daly in Detroit and was given much of the credit for the team's stifling defense.
The only thing I can say is I'm thrilled. I'm excited. I'm glad to be here. And I can't wait to get to work.
June 23rd, 1988, the NBA expansion draft. This is where the Heat and the Charlotte Hornets would get their first players, selecting from other NBA rosters. It was a process that delivered veterans Billy Thompson, Scott Hastings, John Sundvold, and Pearl Washington to the Heat's first roster.
We like the position we're in right now.
Just 5 days later, the Heat participated in their first ever NBA college draft held in New York City. Back in Miami, fans had reason to celebrate at the Heat's very first draft party.
The draft party in downtown Miami was spectacular. Then we had at least 4,000, 5,000 people. I remember the fire marshals going crazy.
Balloons, streamers, everything. I mean, we thought, boy, what's going to happen when we actually win something? I mean, it was just very exciting.
The Miami Heat select Ron Seikaly from Syracuse University.
He was perfect for Miami. He was a Mediterranean guy, part Greek, part Lebanese. He spoke many languages.
I've wanted to come here from day one. If I really had a choice, if I was a free agent, I would have picked to come here.
With the 20th pick in round one, a selection acquired in the expansion draft, the Heat chose shooting guard Kevin Edwards from DePaul University, and then added a second-round gem in blue-collar power forward Grant Long from Eastern Michigan University.
So you were trying to build a foundation of some veteran players, but mostly young guys that you could add to year after year and build something.
We went with the younger route. We got to play our younger players and give them the experience of playing in the NBA.
With a philosophy that I think always works, which is we're going to have a team that's going to make you proud on its hustle. We may not please you with the final outcome, but we'll be better each year.
It really was an emotional thing that we were able to ignite the passion of Miami. We just ignited the imagination. And the very first slogan was, "The dream catches fire." And that's really what it was about, that we had a dream and that it caught fire.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. In the fall of 1988, the first Heat team was built from scratch and comprised of 6 inexperienced rookies and 6 grizzled veterans nearing the end of their careers. They would blend together to create the Miami Heat's inaugural team.
On October 8, 1988, the Heat opened its first training camp at the University of Miami. While the team was preparing for its first season, it was up to the front office to prepare for the first regular season game in franchise history.
A lot of us had never put on a basketball game before, had never worked for a franchise.
You had no one to go to. You had no choice, so you had to just find a way to get it done.
Everything in the arena had only been tested a few times, scoreboards, the stats crew, all the statistical systems, all these kinds of things.
It was hectic. I think we all slept in the office.
Just 2 days before their first game, the Heat made a significant addition, signing veteran Rory Sparrow, who instantly became the team's first leader and starting point guard. Finally, on November 5th, 1988, the Miami Heat premiered on opening night.
It is truly showtime in Miami.
We were in regular tuxes, and of course the giveaway was the tuxedo T-shirt.
The atmosphere was very Hollywood. We had Don Johnson, we had everybody coming out in tuxedos.
It was all a part of the coming out party, the introduction of the Miami Heat to the Miami community.
And I remember really feeling a sense of accomplishment, but a sense of pride too, to be part of this, and the fact that it really was history.
With the first game underway at Miami Arena against the Los Angeles Clippers, Rory Sparrow made the first basket in Heat history, nearly 4 minutes into the first quarter.
When Rory Sparrow pulled up and hit that mid-range jump shot, we're all kind of holding our breath, hoping this thing would go in.
I felt very comfortable about the shot, and it went in, and the place went crazy, and I was like, okay, that's 2 points, and we still got to get back into this game.
The team kept competing, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough. The Heat lost its first game against the Clippers, 111-91. Those first Heat fans fell in love with their team, regardless of their record, and displayed their support night in and night out. The Heat was quickly becoming known as a scrappy, hard-working team on the court, and from day one, for the in-game entertainment and a fan experience that surpassed any other NBA team.
I think the ownership group at the time knew that the team was going to take a while to develop, and that we needed to be an entertainment avenue.
We were always stretching our imaginations, that nothing was impossible.
Winning games was another story. Rothstein's Heat played hard but went unrewarded. 17 games played, 17 games lost.
To say I'm not frustrated, I'd be a liar. But I ain't quitting. and those guys won't either.
The Heat was drawing attention for the wrong reason. The 0-17 start was the NBA's worst ever record to begin a season. It was a cruel and difficult introduction to life in the NBA, and it left many people wondering just when this expansion team would earn its first win.
The frustration starts building because you're right there. You're not getting blown out. You're working hard. You're matching up. Just a couple of mistakes here and there could turn the game.
You're watching the late night shows and you become part of the jokes. And I say to myself, we got to win sometime.
Every time the Heat loses, we're going to add a candle to this altar. And unfortunately, as the Heat kept losing and losing, we kept adding candles.
Their collective heart and hustle did not go unnoticed. The team kept fighting for a win, and the fans kept fighting for their team.
We're not going to give up, and we just hope that the people that are supporting us are not going to give up, and we're going to get a win sooner or later.
I was still worried whether the fans had ever left us, and they never deserted us.
We'd lose games, but we'd walk off the court, man, and the crowd is just cheering, oh, good job.
The respect the community had for the hustle and the fight and the energy that Ronnie Rothstein and Tony brought to that team. It was just great.
I just said, look, it doesn't matter. We've got to show up the next day and do what we need to do to try and get a win.
We were measuring ourselves about how much more competitive we were getting, how much better we were running the system, how much better we were playing defense. And it was our philosophy that if we continued to do these things, we would get our win.
And eventually, they did.
The first victory hangs in the balance right here. Dixon on the outside. 5 seconds, 3 seconds. Nixon stops, jumps, shoots, it's on its way. No good. Miami Heat win. The Miami Heat win.
Pat came running up to me, and I was like in shock. Pat wasn't the hugging kind of guy. And Dave wasn't the hugging kind of guy either. And, we hugged. It was just the emotion of the moment.
It was the first euphoric moment in Heat history when we finally got that first win.
It was like a 50-ton gorilla just was off our back. It was so relievful just to get that win finally. It felt like we won the World Championship trophy.
The only thing that missing in the locker room after that game was champagne.
Everybody was happy, everybody was upbeat, and we felt like we had accomplished something and we could kind of build from there.
It gave everybody the confidence knowing that we could win and we could go out, and hopefully it wouldn't be another 17 before we had another win.
The Miami Heat franchise initial startup cost in 1987 was $32.5 million. The approximate cost for an NBA franchise today is around $375 million, a difference of over $342 million in just 20 years.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. The Miami Heat had earned the right to be a franchise, built an organization, and after losing its first 17 games, won one in Los Angeles. Now it was time to give the home fans in South Florida something to celebrate. On December 23rd, 1989, the Heat hosted the powerhouse Utah Jazz with their two stars, Karl Malone and John Stockton.
It was Friday, December 23rd. The win at home, it felt like a championship, not just a game. Everyone jumped to celebration. What a holiday present.
And the Heat win at home. 101-80, the Miami Heat get a victory at home. And this crowd is loving every moment of this one tonight.
There's just a lot of euphoria among the people that you work with.
They were dancing in the aisles. They were carrying on.
We all kind of savored that win for 2 or 3, 4, possibly 5 days.
Another challenge in that first season was Miami's placement in the Midwest Division of the Western Conference.
The only reason we were put in the Midwest Division and the Western Conference was in fairness to the other teams in the East, to strike some kind of balance.
Teams were not taking charter flights, they were flying commercial. So it added a tremendous amount of travel time that other teams did not have to deal with.
You had to take the first plane out in the morning. So if it was 6 o'clock and you had just played a game, 6 a.m. you got to be at the airport, you got to check in.
Commercial flights. It was always fun. It was always intriguing, I guess, because you would always wonder who's going to miss the flight, who's going to miss the bus to the plane.
Mid-January 1989 brought unprecedented drama. The nation's eyes were starting to focus on the Magic City as it prepared to host Super Bowl 23. But a sweet week turned sour when harsh reality intervened. On January 16th, Colombian-born Miami police officer William Lozano shot a young black man, Clement Lloyd, riding on a motorcycle eluding police, killing him and the passenger, Alan Blanchard.
It was a very surreal day. You were aware of other things that are going on, the unrest going on that was in the town, and, the feeling for, how helpless you feel when something like that's going on.
Rioting began in Overtown almost immediately after the incident and lasted for 3 days, resulting in 1 more death, 11 injuries, and 13 buildings burned down. It was a sad and difficult time for Miami as civil disobedience and racial tension polarized the community. On the second day of unrest, the Heat had a game at the Miami Arena in Overtown.
The city just went up in flames, and I can remember watching much of the city burn right from my building.
I grew up in war-torn countries, and the least I expected was me driving to an NBA game and having roadblocks, and we weren't allowed to get to the game.
With tip-off just hours away, fearing for the safety of the fans, the Heat-Suns game was postponed and later rescheduled. It was the first time ever that an NBA game was canceled due to a civil disturbance.
It really wasn't the team's decision per se, because safety for our fans was paramount. And the police at the time felt that they could not give us adequate police support.
And I recall, after doing one live shot, an interview with Ickey Woods and his family, we looked out of the window and we saw downtown Miami burning.
Hundreds of Miami police officers, and many with batons and the plastic shields. It was a very frightening experience.
And I think it opened up a lot of guys to wow, society still goes on, and there's more to life than just this basketball game.
The 3-day disturbance that nearly broke up a city began to subside, but for the next home game, there was one daunting question. Would the fans return downtown to the arena? On January 19, 3 days after the riots, that question was answered thanks to the appearance of one extraordinary basketball icon.
Everybody in attendance tonight, whether you're a Heat fan or just an NBA fan, wants to see the master, Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan ended the Miami riot. It was a full house, and everyone wanted to see him in his only Miami appearance.
Sports brought people back into the city, and, it ended what could have been a long-term problem.
It brought that great melting pot of a city back together, and the common cause was the Miami Heat and NBA basketball.
On February 17th, with a record of 5-42, the Heat were matched up against the other expansion team. The Hornets had defeated the Heat in Charlotte in late November, and it was a battle of new teams with differing philosophies on how to build a franchise.
They were the team that did it the other way. They went with the veteran guys, we went with the young guys. So we were always out to prove that our way was the right way.
There was a little bit of hype going into this thing. With them being the Hornets, the fly swatter was a nice added feature.
We've got our Hornet swatters tonight. We're going to give them heck tonight.
It was a 2-point game, like on the whole fourth quarter, maybe the whole second half.
2 seconds, 1 second. Sparrow jumps out on its way. He got it! Sparrow hits it! Miami wins!
And the stands converged. I mean, everyone throws all the fly swatters into the crowd. I mean, it was just the sea of fly swatters that were coming down.
We were the expansion champions. We had beat the other expansion team.
The Heat would go on to pick up 2 more big wins in the inaugural season, the first against their arch rival, the New York Knicks.
And Miami upsets New York on the home floor.
The other win came in Houston in the season finale against the playoff-bound Houston Rockets.
Edwards took it all the way down the lane to score. Miami takes the lead.
As the season came to an end, South Florida was no longer a one-sport town. A new organization had been built from scratch in just 2 years, and in Miami, the Heat was on.
It was a charming time. It was the true honeymoon period. It was the only time in our history where winning was secondary.
Win or lose, fans were coming here. It was sold out. People loved it. It was a place to be seen. They took us as if we were like their children growing up. So they came and watched their children see if they're going to do better next game.
The Miami Heat was on the rise.
Here's Rice, a jumper. We made it. Miami wins the game. You could begin to see, starting really in the second year, the development of a team.
It was a young group of players growing together, devoted to its fans and its city, even through a natural disaster.
It looked like someone dropped a bomb on the Homestead area.
Try to rebuild the city and do whatever we could.
Experience the Heat's first taste of success.
The lob, Beckham!
the Miami Heat at that point was here to stay.
It was the end of an era as the Heat reached its peak.
It was just like you're losing your family.
And at our darkest hour came the biggest thing that ever happened to the Miami Heat.
When Mickey took over the franchise, that's when the franchise was going to now take off.
Welcome to Inside the Heat and the second edition of the Miami Heat's 20th anniversary show. I'm Eric Reed. The 1989 NBA draft was the next chance for the Heat to improve and add more young talent to the team. After finishing their first season with only 15 wins, Miami owned the fourth pick, which to this day remains the best draft position in franchise history. It was clearly a pick they needed to capitalize on. For a team being built with young players, this was a crucial choice in that building process.
The Miami Heat selects Glenn Rice from the University of Michigan.
I really kind of favored Miami. I didn't really tell no one, but I really enjoyed the time I had down there.
At that time, it was one of the best feelings ever. That's one of the things that you work so hard to a point to get to.
That might have been the most significant draft in Heat history because we were last in the league in year one in scoring. And by luck of the draft, with the fourth pick, we took Glenn Rice coming off the national championship at Michigan.
And with their second pick in that draft, they chose Sherman Douglas, another well-known college player. He had a terrific career as the point guard at Syracuse. He was Ronnie Cycli's point guard when they were in college together.
He would go inside, in between the tree trunks, so to speak, in the redwood forest, and come up with amazing lollipop shots.
By the Heat's second NBA season in 1989-90, they had gathered a young, talented nucleus consisting of Ronnie Cycli, Glenn Rice, Sherman Douglas, Kevin Edwards, and Grant Long. Douglas replaced Rory Sparrow in the starting lineup.
Drives to the center lane, puts it up the top. Good at the goal! Sherman Douglas.
Miami's young talent were a group that brought excitement to the arena, and they would grow as players and people together.
There's 1 second. Here's Rice, a jumper. He made it. He made it. He made it. Miami wins the game.
So as every year you're kind of watching the initial group grow and then add to the talent base. And then you could begin to see, starting really in the second year, the development of a team.
In February of 1990, Miami was the place to be as the Miami Heat hosted the All-Star Game. John Sundvold participated in the three-point shooting contest, while Billy Thompson entertained us in the slam dunk contest.
1-2, we got them both!
While it was just the beginning for the growing young core of the Heat, Miami's second season was the final NBA campaign for veterans like Rory Sparrow and Pat Cummings. But this wasn't about endings. The young Heat was just beginning to rise. One player who rose more than any other was Ronnie Cycli.
And the spin doctor lays it in.
In between the first and second year, he worked very hard with the coaching staff on his footwork, his skill work, and the second year, he came back and was the most improved player in the NBA.
It's a great honor because I worked so hard during that off season after the first year to come back and be the best I could possibly be.
The Heat ended their second season with 18 victories, a modest 3-game improvement from the year before. As year 3 began, the 1990-91 team added a few more young players to the mix. Forwards Willie Burton and Alec Kessler were selected in the first round of the 1990 NBA draft. Guard Bimbo Coles was acquired from Sacramento in a draft night deal for Rory Sparrow. And forward Keith Askins, undrafted out of Alabama, was signed as a free agent.
Keith Askins' intangibles, what he showed as a college player, showed in the NBA. All Keith was about winning.
Fussell with a capital H.
I will never forget the night as a rookie. We had a game at home, and we took a beating. And I was really angry at the team when we went in the locker room after the game. Does anybody in here want to stand up now and say something to their teammates? And all of a sudden, I see this hand go up, and it was Keith. And he stood up, and he went after his teammates. I just sat back, put my feet up, and said, okay, my rookie just did my job for me.
It's not a individual sport, it's a team sport. And for me to do well, I got to have everyone else doing well. You know, if I don't make it, if you're not making it, so I got to have help. And if someone's not helping me make it, I'm going to let them know about it.
Season 3 ended with more good times than wins. Miami finished the 90-91 season with a 24-58 record, 6 more wins than the year before. The young core gave Heat fans hope that the future would be brighter.
NBA basketball was in South Florida, and at least you saw a progression.
Frankly, people didn't gauge us at that time or for those first 3 years really on how many games we won. They based us on how nice we were to them, we being the team, and how hard the team played.
Inside the Heat is brought to you by your South Florida Mercedes-Benz dealers. Love what you drive.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat and our special look back at 20 years of Heat basketball. The 1990-91 team did not enjoy great success in terms of winning games, but the Heat players stuck together and improved with a blue-collar philosophy. New additions were on the horizon, and some exciting basketball was still on the way.
The 1991 season began with the resignation of head coach Ron Rothstein and the hiring of former Atlanta Hawks assistant Kevin Lockery. In the 91 draft, the team selected the multi-talented point guard from Michigan State University, Steve Smith.
I have a great feeling going to Miami. I like the players because a lot of them from Michigan.
Watching some of the things that he would do out on the court, it was like Magic Johnson type like stuff.
At that time brought a great tenacity to the game, which had been something we had been lacking.
With the new pieces in place, the 1991-92 team was growing together and establishing themselves in the NBA.
Alley-oop for Cycling, and he dunks!
They showed signs of improvement, but they still showed that they were a young team. On December 17, 1991, the Heat faced the Cleveland Cavaliers and lost by 68 points, still the widest margin of defeat in NBA history.
The Cavaliers destroy the Miami Heat 148-80.
It's the only game that I've really needed a calculator for, just to compute the difference between where the Cavs were and where the Heat. We were so far behind.
We couldn't do anything right, and it really showed that we were a young team. We were frustrated, and all our mistakes just started compounding.
The very next day, the team bounced back from the embarrassing loss with an impressive win against the Indiana Pacers in overtime.
That's when you could tell there was something special about this fourth-year Heat team. They were resilient.
We did not want to get embarrassed the way we did that night in Cleveland.
Guarded by Miller, shoots the three. Good!
During the second half of the season, the Heat continued to improve and soon had the first major trade in team history. In mid-January, the Heat traded Sherman Douglas to the Boston Celtics for Brian Shaw.
He was a veteran leadership that at that time we needed. It was a brilliant move.
That backcourt was an outstanding backcourt because both Brian and Steve Smith can play both the point guard and the two-guard position.
Brian was bringing up the ball. I just ran to the shooting guard spot, and vice versa. We just played off each other.
Glenn Rice also emerged that season as the team's top scoring threat, averaging 22 points and 155 three-point field goals.
Here's a three by Rice. Yes!
Left side pass for Rice. Here's another three. He hits again!
The Heat ended the season with a record of 38-44, yet still had a chance to make the playoffs depending on the outcome of one game.
It came down to a Cleveland-Atlanta game, which would decide whether or not we made the playoffs or not.
Kevin Lockery was doing a TV show on Channel 33 called Sports Wrap.
It happened that his show was on as that game was being decided.
With Cleveland beating Atlanta, the Heat entered the playoffs for the first time in franchise history as an 8th seed against the Chicago Bulls.
We've never been to the playoffs, and we don't know what to expect or even how to react. We just know it's a great feeling to be going for the first time.
We were thrilled for ourselves, thrilled for the coaches, and mostly thrilled for the city because they had gone through so many growing pains with us as players.
We have to face what was then the start of a dynasty, one of the greatest basketball dynasties and one of the greatest players in the history, if not the greatest player, Michael Jordan.
The Heat played games 1 and 2 in Chicago, yet were unable to get a win. They headed home to Miami with hopes of getting their first ever playoff win in Game 3.
The whole city kind of recognized that this was the first playoff game in NBA history for Miami, and I think kind of galvanized the whole community.
I got to be honest with you, it's a feeling I will never forget. I walked into the building that night, and even hours before the game, I felt electricity.
The building's going to blow off. That's how loud it was and how excited the fans were.
We brought out the clackers, which I think we were one of the first teams ever to bring these clackers for the playoffs.
The vibe in that building, your heart was beating faster.
And that building was so loud, my ears might still be ringing.
Brian Shaw, the lob, the jam!
The Heat was on fire and surprised the Bulls by holding them to a 33-19 lead in the first quarter and holding Michael Jordan to only 2 points.
We got out to a great start. I mean, everything we threw up seemed to go in, and everybody was excited.
That was probably the scariest moment of my career, because I'm thinking, oh my God, we are just destroying them. I mean, what is going on? The adrenaline was pumping so much.
But Michael Jordan came back with a vengeance, finishing with 56 points, sweeping Miami out of the playoffs.
It seemed like a light just woke up in Michael's eyes, and from that on, he scored 53 points in 3 quarters.
Kevin Lockery, who had coached Michael Jordan in his rookie year, had talked to Michael Jordan's father and said, if you hold him to 50, you'll win. We held him to 56 and we lost by 5.
Once we got into the playoffs and had an understanding of what that was like, we wanted more of that.
When we got eliminated, we realized that we belonged. Chicago, even though, they beat us the way they did, they felt us. And we knew that the Miami Heat at that point was here to stay.
We'll be back. We'll be back.
Inside the Heat is brought to you by your South Florida Mercedes-Benz dealers. Love what you drive. Prior to Miami's 5th NBA season, South Florida suddenly had more serious concerns. A Category 5 hurricane named Andrew was churning a path straight for Miami.
We expect that the storm is going to be in our neighborhood here.
We woke up on the morning of August 24th, and one whole section of South Dade no longer existed. It looked like someone dropped a bomb on the Homestead area.
I came from Kendall. I remember going out to where my in-laws were, where I had other family members, and huge gaping holes in roofs that you thought, oh my goodness.
When I lived on Key Biscayne, seeing the boats all on the road and seeing cars pretty much turned over.
Breaking glass, the roar of the wind, the absolute vertical flight of the rain coming into the house. It was a very surrealistic experience.
And I think there was a genuine sense that we need to do something.
The Miami Heat responded immediately after Hurricane Andrew, reaching out to those South Dade neighborhoods.
Not only did the Heat help in the community, Michael Jordan stepped up and we had a game raising money for it.
We did the We Will Rebuild game with the Chicago Bulls, and that game was established because of Billy Cunningham's relationship with the Bulls, but most importantly with Michael Jordan and Michael's endorsement of us playing that game.
Hopefully we don't have another natural disaster like this, but I think this is a great process to start rebuilding for the city of Miami.
It was a great night because basketball transcended more than just a game. It was a rallying point for the community. It raised money. I think it raised national awareness that there were areas down here that needed help.
We tried to do everything we could as a team. We got out into the community and try to rebuild the city and do whatever we could.
We are not a franchise just to come here and play ball and make money and everybody go their separate ways. We are entrenched in this community in more ways than people can imagine.
We are part of this community. This is our community. We live in it, and we're not going to let things like this separate us from that community. We're going to be more involved.
The 92-93 season brought some new faces to the Heat. Veteran forward John Salley was acquired in a draft day trade, and with the 12th pick, the Heat selected Harold Miner from USC. Miner, in his rookie season, would go on to win the 1993 Gatorade Slam Dunk Contest during NBA's All-Star Weekend.
Remember, All-Star Weekend, he owns it.
Unfortunately, the Heat did not make the 93 playoffs, ending the season with a disappointing 36-46 record.
There had been improvement every year until this year, and it was sort of our first step back.
The Heat responded with a giant step forward in the 93-94 season, improving to a season high of 42 wins, its first ever winning season, and its return to the playoffs.
Cycling, slams it home. Great move by Smith. Oh, what a play.
Unlike the first time we made the playoffs, where it took somebody else to get us into the playoffs, this year that team won their way in.
Miami, how do you like us now? The Heat are in the NBA playoffs, and they win their way in.
Miami would face the top-seeded Atlanta Hawks.
When we got matched up with the Hawks, we really thought that we could win that series.
We went up to Atlanta. They were the 1 seed, and we're the 8 seed, and we win that first game.
The biggest win in the history of the franchise. Their 4th playoff game, their first playoff win.
When you win that first one, you just have an automatic feeling of, okay, you can do it. You know, we've beaten this team. We can beat them. We're going to win this series.
Oh, again on
There was a real intense mood for the fans and players going into that second game, and that's what sort of led to the fight.
I have never seen Grant Long this upset. The benches have emptied. You saw this thing brewing all through the third quarter. A melee on the court at the Omni.
The big fight started between Grant Long and Dwayne Farrell and spilled all over the court, and it was your first taste of playoff intensity, and how much this mattered.
The league was at a breaking point where it was okay to be physical, but it was a line that you crossed, and that line was crossed.
I was actually defending my teammate, Len Rice. The game was sort of going or getting out of control. There were a few hard fouls that had took place.
We were kind of getting under the skin of the Atlanta Hawks. They were supposed to beat us easily.
The melee resulted in suspensions for Long and Askins for Game 3 of the series. With the Clackers in full force and the New World Symphony in play, the Heat returned to the Miami Arena and won their first home playoff game.
Miami takes a 2-1 lead. The first ever playoff win from Miami Arena.
We came down here at Game 3. We were confident we were going to win, and we won it.
It's the first chance for South Florida to celebrate with their team over a playoff win at home. It was so exciting. We were so close to experiencing what it was like to win a playoff series.
But the celebration didn't last long. In Game 4, the Heat had their first chance at winning a playoff series, but fell short to the Hawks, forcing a deciding Game 5 in Atlanta. Back in Atlanta, the Hawks prevailed, winning a hard-fought series 3-2.
That was a first taste of winning, a first taste of how hard it was to advance, and it was your life lesson of what you had to do.
We just fell short. It was a heartbreaker for us.
They broke through in a way with 2 playoff wins in that series, but the real breakthrough would have been winning that series. It was frustrating and it was sad because the Heat could have made history. Welcome back to Inside the Heat. South Florida's NBA fans had grown in number and grown close to a core group of players they watched enter the league as rookies and then blossom into good players on a playoff team. But the era of innocence was about to end in Miami as the business of pro basketball brought big changes.
Coming off a season-ending playoffs loss to the Atlanta Hawks, the Miami Heat was ready to kick off a fresh new year. However, the Heat's 94-95 season began with a pair of shocking moves.
I think Louis Chaffel and Billy Cunningham felt at the time that with that particular team, the Heat they went as far as they could go.
On November 2nd, 1994, just 2 days before the season began, in a move that surprised many, the Heat traded center Ronnie Cycli to the Golden State Warriors.
Was something that I did not expect. You know, we've built that team, and that team has become so good.
The honeymoon was over. It was sort of a hard thing to accept. I mean, Cycli was our first pick in our history, and we'd watch him go through his growing pains, and we'd all been a part of that. And all of a sudden, just like that, he was gone.
When you had franchise-building players like Ronnie get traded, it was like a personal thing. You know, it was like, wait, you didn't ask me. You know, I don't want Ronnie Cycli to go. He's a good guy. So I remember thinking, wow, you know, now it's serious.
Just 5 days after the Cycli trade, the Heat made another surprising move, trading Grant Long and Steve Smith to the Atlanta Hawks. The deal was made while the team was on the road, en route from Phoenix to Golden State.
Once we get on the plane, Kevin Lockery comes back and said, Grant Long and Steve Smith, can I see you? And right then I knew we had got traded.
And Steve and I get our luggage and we get off the plane. We're sitting on the tarmac on our luggage saying, okay, now what do we do from here?
And then to see that plane take off, I mean, it was just like you're losing your family.
We were a very close-knit team back then. Steve Smith, Brian Shaw, Glenn Rice, Grant Long. We kind of grew up together. And that's why it was sad to see that team dismantled.
You're talking about cornerstones being traded. That weighs a lot on you. It affects the team.
Within a week to 10 days, no more Ronnie Cycli, no more Grant Long, and no more Steve Smith. This wasn't the same Heat team that we'd all grown used to and sort of grown in love with. 3 well-known and well-liked players were gone, and in their place came Kevin Willis, Sasha Danilovich, and Billy Owens. The new-look Heat were struggling.
By the end of January, they were 14 games under 500 and lacked an identity.
We were losing with a lot of guys we barely knew, and it was sort of a dark, lost time for the Miami Heat.
There were more changes to come. The two men who had run the Heat since the franchise began were in the process of selling their interest in the team, throwing the Heat into a chasm of uncertainty.
The Heat was now a rudderless ship, and at our darkest hour came the biggest thing that ever happened to the Miami Heat.
Mickey Arison, the son of Heat patriarch Ted Arison, stepped forward to purchase the interests of Cunningham and Chaffel. It solidified the Arison family's control of the franchise, and Mickey became the team's managing general partner.
What happened was that my father moved back to Israel in the early 90s and turned over the investment in the Heat to me. And at that point, with Lou and Billy leaving, it was a team really without a basketball organization, and we were really starting from scratch.
At that moment, when Mickey took over the franchise, that's when the franchise was going to now take off.
It was then, during the NBA's All-Star break in Phoenix, as Harold Miner repeated as the slam dunk champion.
Oh, yes.
And Glenn Rice won the three-point shootout.
The heat wave up in here, y'all take note.
By winning these contests, it brought the kind of attention that we weren't used to. I think it was just a hint that our luck was about to change.
We really like to set a new tone, a new direction for the team. I met with a lot of potential GM candidates at the All-Star break in Phoenix.
He hires Dave Wohl as the general manager. Dave Wohl lets Kevin Lockery go, puts Alvin Gentry as the interim head coach.
Gentry finished coaching the remainder of the season, and Glenn Rice continued to be a steadfast for the team, scoring 56 points against the Orlando Magic and setting the franchise highest individual point total in a single game, a record that has stood for over a dozen years.
Here is Rice for three!
Everything changed, and even then you knew there was more to come.
Mickey was taking control, he was stepping up, and from the moment he did, things got better. From the very moment Mickey Arison became managing general partner, he was totally committed to making the Miami Heat a championship contending franchise. His eventual hiring of Pat Riley to run that franchise was the start of great things and big games that were just ahead for the Miami Heat. Thanks for watching this edition of Inside the Heat. I'm Eric Reed.
With new direction came big changes for the Miami Heat.
Arguably the greatest basketball coach in the history of the sport, and now he was with the Heat.
There's this image in my mind about the symbolic parade, this championship parade.
All of a sudden, the Miami Heat had something it never had before. It had an identity.
We're the hardest working, toughest, nastiest team in the NBA.
That season was the season that he became rock stars.
Witness the birth of one of the most intense rivalries in sport.
Watch out, this one's going to get really ugly.
And it ignited one of the greatest comebacks in history.
Hardaway for three!
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another special edition of Inside the Heat. I'm Eric Reed. In their first 7 years as an NBA franchise, the Miami Heat enjoyed one winning season and twice made it to the playoffs, where both times they were eliminated in the first round. Not bad for an expansion team, but not noteworthy otherwise. Then, in the summer of 1995, Mickey Arison changed the course of Heat history and set the tone for a new era of Heat basketball with the first of many bold moves. All of a sudden, word starts to emanate from New York City that the Heat and Pat Riley had begun talking.
Mickey wanted to win an NBA championship. And so what did he do in the offseason? Well, he went out and got the best guy he could possibly get, Pat Riley.
Mickey basically said, I don't care what it costs, what it takes. I'm going to make sure that my team has everything that it needs to become a contender.
That I wanted to get the best head coach possible. Pat was the best head coach available, maybe the best head coach in the league.
It's
my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce you to the new president and head coach of the Miami Heat, Pat Riley. Pat.
He took the job. We now sit on board one of the Carnival ships.
I believe that we could go down and change the culture and we could turn it quick.
I think the fortunes of the team dramatically changed when Pat came aboard.
It was clear that the Heat were determined to make a statement about who they were and the importance, really, of the Miami market.
Here we are sitting here, and arguably the greatest basketball coach in the history of the sport, and now he was with the Heat.
There's this image in my mind about the symbolic parade, this championship parade, and that's the only reason that I coach.
Everything we did from that day forward was based upon what is going to lead to that parade down Biscayne Boulevard.
Because that's really what sports does. It gives you hope that this is the person who takes you to the promised land.
Pat Riley did not waste any time. 17 days into his tenure, he hired his former Laker assistant, Randy Fund, as the Heat's executive vice president.
I knew if Pat was going to be in Miami, it was going to be first class, and we were going to build a winner.
Mickey is the one that said, hey, change it. Let's make this a first-class franchise.
Wiley has always believed that the way you win in the NBA is to get a dominant big man. And so he looked around, and the first guy he went after was Alonzo Mourning.
I remember getting a call in the middle of the night from Pat saying Alonzo Mourning's available to trade. It's going to be very expensive. But if we pull the trigger, it's going to make a huge difference in the future of this franchise.
Just 2 days before the start of the season, Pat Riley sent Glenn Rice to Charlotte for Alonzo Mourning in a 6-player blockbuster trade.
Look at him try! He was the closer. You could see why they wanted him to sort of be the Wall Street character in the movies. He got deals done.
I think I'm fortunate to be in this situation right now. I will be playing under one of the greatest coaches that ever coached the game.
It was very exciting knowing someone the caliber of Alonzo and what he would bring to the franchise.
The shot!
All of a sudden, the Miami Heat had something it never had before. It had an identity.
It was like a God thing. I didn't expect something like that to happen this quickly, and that just sort of launched. It really did. It really launched the start of my tenure here in a very positive way.
The Heat launched its new era, winning 11 of their 14 games. In mid-December, the Heat faced the Knicks in New York.
And there's always been an inherent rivalry between Miami and New York.
Something has to happen to make that rivalry happen.
Going back to New York, I knew what was coming. I was getting nasty letters from fans. I was getting death threats.
And I can remember the headlines in the paper, Pat the Rat coming back.
Pat the Rat?
Pat the Rat. It was really comical.
By the end of February, the Heat were languishing at 24-29. Once again, Pat Riley dramatically changed his team. At the trading deadline, in one of the biggest trading days in NBA history, Miami completed 3 separate deals involving 10 players that would include the acquisition of Tim Hardaway. But before they could arrive in Miami, there was a game to be played against the world champions.
We had 8 guys. I mean, we had to hustle Tony Smith in here like quick to even be legal. And if we didn't, we're going to have to sign somebody off the street.
With only 8 players available, Rex Chapman led Miami to one of their most unlikely and memorable wins in franchise history.
Rex for 3. Oh, boy! Rex Chapman! Pat Riley gets his most pleasing and most significant win as the head coach of the Miami Heat.
It came at the right time. I needed a new scenery. I needed a new life. You could tell that the energy was here. They wanted something to happen now. I got skills.
With Tim and Alonzo, we had our first national stars.
Those 2 guys turned the franchise around.
Hardaway!
When Pat Riley and Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway got here, they became the core and the identity of the Heat.
Got it to show for the stuff.
Riley's first Heat team finished with a 42-40 record and made the 1996 playoffs.
We made the playoffs. The fans were excited. We got beat, of course, by the Bulls, but we had something going for us.
Tim Hardaway took it away from Jordan and laid it in.
Despite being swept by the Bulls, the Heat were optimistic about their future under Pat Riley.
It was just the beginning of what was to come in the Pat Riley year in Miami.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. In the summer of 1996, the Miami Heat made more changes to an improving roster. On consecutive days in July, they signed a pair of coveted free agent forwards. First came Juwan Howard, followed by P.J. Brown. However, Juwan Howard never wound up playing for the Heat. The NBA disallowed his contract. They did retain P.J. Brown, and he would become an important person and a key role player on some of the best teams in Heat history.
After the Juwan Howard situation fell apart, we had already signed PJ, and I don't think that any of us, myself included, realized what an athlete we were getting.
PJ was sort of an unknown factor at the time we made the trade and became an incredibly valuable player.
He did every little thing that you could ask for. Hustle, rebound, block shots. He did everything.
On August 22nd, 1996, the Heat added another important piece to the puzzle in veteran Dan Marley, a two-time NBA All-Star.
When Dan came to Miami, I was like, whew, all right, I got Thunder on my team.
For a Thunder Dan three. Thunder!
Dan Marley added a lot to this franchise as a defender, a great three-point shooter, and an outstanding passer.
That first year I got there, I was surrounded by a great team. You know, Keith Askins and Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning. One of the best experiences I've had as a player.
Together, Dan and PJ were a perfect fit to Miami's core group, and they would embody Pat Riley's philosophy and mindset.
They are the ones that planted the seed that established the foundation. Rizzo, and Keith and Tim Hardaway. A real foundation and a work ethic that I think made sense, mattered, counted, and was respected around the league.
Coach knew that to win, you needed a team, and he knew that he needed Tim and Zoe. They were our superstars. They were the guys that led us night in, night out in games. But he also knew that you needed role players also to have a complete team, and you needed guys who weren't going to get all the shots, guys who were going to come out and play their roles and do their job to the best of their ability.
Leonard!
The 96-97 Heat had the look and feel of an NBA contender, winning 14 of their first 18 games, 9 of them on the road. Their defense and conditioning earned them the nickname the Road Warriors.
We relish the fact of being able to go into another opponent's arena. Hey, we're going to outwork you, we're going to out-hustle you, we're going to beat you up, and we're coming to win the game.
Oh, my! He blew by him! Rammed it!
I mean, it was amazing how we played the game defensively and how we just shut teams down defensively.
When we stepped on the court, people and players knew that it was going to be the toughest game that they were going to play because we were going to make you work, and we were going to make it a living hell on the basketball court.
Dan Marley for three. Wow! 3 seconds left. Leonard double pumps and hits. He hit it, and the Heat win. Voshon Leonard.
Voshon Leonard, a free agent out of the CBA, emerged as a three-point shooting threat and a determined defender. Together with Tim Hardaway, they formed one of the league's best backcourt duos.
Voshon Leonard, probably the best shooter that ever coached. Pure shooter.
On the court, strong, could shoot the ball, stroke it. He played a tremendous part on our team.
Let's get ready to rumble! There it is. Can you feel the heat down in your soul?
Miami was feeling the heat, and Pat Riley was feeling the need to add one final piece, acquiring the high-scoring athletic swingman Jamal Mashburn from Dallas on February 14th, 1997.
He was considered the X factor. He could handle the ball like a point guard. He could shoot the ball from the three-point line like a three-man. He just made our team that much better.
The 96-97 Road Warriors were a group of talented and unselfish players who did whatever it took for the greater good of the team. And all had one goal in mind, a championship.
I was just astonished that everybody came together and would diminish a role or step up a role or on any given night step into another contribution and be okay with it.
We're the hardest working, best conditioned, most unselfish, toughest, nastiest team in the NBA.
That was the mantra from the first day that I walked in, and wanted our players to look to that as a philosophy and to make that part of what we are, and they did. And I think that what we did went out to the NBA.
Inside the Heat is brought to you by your South Florida Mercedes-Benz dealers. Love what you drive.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. The 1996-97 team was the hardest working, most talented team Miami had seen yet. The Heat was now 9 years old and were, for the first time, a championship contending team. They were also on their way to the best regular season in Heat history.
I believe a lot of teams that came in and played us, they didn't want to play against us. Our guys worked hard. They're in great shape. They came at you defensively, and it wasn't going to be an easy night.
A steal by Mourning and a breakaway. Alonzo Mourning.
On April 10th, 1997, with their first ever Atlantic Division title in reach, the Heat beat the Pistons and needed a loss from New York to clinch the division.
Miami gets it done, and it's just a matter of time until the Atlantic Division Championship is theirs.
Moments later, the Bulls-Knicks game was piped live into the Miami Arena. For both the fans watching the Jumbotron and the players, it was surreal.
A huge contingent of people, including the Harrison family, were all standing in the hallway at the Miami Arena, looking up on the TV screens to see if we were going to win the division title.
And it is over. The Knicks have lost. The Heat are champions of the Atlantic Division.
It was the first thing that was tangible that we won.
What was your first chance to get a taste of something that was going to lead ultimately to the banner?
This is what we're shooting for. This is where we want to be at. We want an Atlantic Division title, but the big goal was to win an NBA championship.
Just before entering the 1997 NBA playoffs, the Heat had one last milestone to reach, winning their 60th game. They were up against the world champion Bulls, who were going for a goal of their own, their 70th win.
It was sweet because we denied them this great regular season goal they had.
A triple. Got it!
And we accomplished a great regular season goal that we had.
The Heat win their 60th game at Chicago's expense.
I think they have gotten the swagger, the confidence that they need to be champions.
The Heat finished the 96-97 season with 61 wins and 21 losses, the best regular season record in Heat history. The Road Warriors dominated and were 32-9 in visiting arenas, still a franchise best.
That season was the season the Heat became rock stars. That's when you went to every town and you were the team that everyone wanted to beat.
The Heat entered the playoffs brimming with confidence and were matched up in the first round against their former expansion rivals, the Orlando Magic.
1, 2, 3.
Pat Riley's team blew through games 1 and 2 at home and were on their way to a sweep.
Oh my! What a block by Mourning!
We came to that game and we just jumped all over the Magic, and I don't think they knew what hit them.
This is team basketball at its best.
And then it seemed like the momentum seemed to carry over in the second game, and it was much the same.
Form holds here again in Miami as the Heat go up 2-0 on the Orlando Magic.
As the series shifted to Orlando for games 3 and 4, Miami got out to a good start, but before you could spell sweep, the series changed dramatically.
We was up by 20 again, on the way to another blowout, and then all of a sudden, Ronnie Cycli sprains his ankle.
This might well be the very last we see of Ronnie Cycli.
It was like a switch flipped. I mean, it was the complete opposite.
We go to Orlando, and we lose 2 games in a row.
Penny! Oh, my goodness. He is putting on a spectacular show.
Penny went off for 40 both games. Incredible game. He just totally took the game over.
A pull-up 3. The man is on fire, folks.
And the two players that changed the whole series was Darrell Armstrong's full court pressure and Penny Hardaway's greatness. And there's no doubt that by the time we left Orlando after those 2 trashings that we took down there, that we had a tiger by the tail now.
With the series now tied at 2, the Heat headed back to Miami for Game 5, and the pressure was on. The whole season came down to this one deciding game.
The tension was like 20 times as high as it ever been.
Miami built a 17-point lead, but the Magic battled back, closing to within 3 points in the final seconds.
Hardaway for 3, and it's a 3-point game.
The legend of Tim Hardaway, it began to grow in Miami with that game. When the Heat needed to score most late in the game, Tim Hardaway made the biggest shot of that night.
Hardaway for 3.
Orlando played very, very well, but we made enough shots, and then I made that last shot to put us up to win a ball game.
It didn't come easy, but the Miami Heat, for the first time in franchise history, has won a playoff series.
That series, it was a tough one, but it was a wake-up call that we really had to finish games out.
We saw both ends of the spectrum in a positive way. That lesson that still teaches playoff teams today, that is never over until it's over.
On May 8, 1997, Pat Riley was named Coach of the Year, becoming the first coach in NBA history to win Coach of the Year honors with 3 different franchises.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. As the 1997 NBA playoffs move forward, for the first time, so did Miami. Having survived and advanced past Orlando, an even more compelling drama was about to begin. In the Eastern Conference semifinals, Miami would face the New York Knicks. A rivalry that had been simmering for years was about to boil over.
This is going to be a rivalry on so many levels. First of all, it was Pat Riley against his old team. It was Alonzo Mourning versus Patrick Ewing, 2 Georgetown buddies. It was New York versus Miami.
You had the Van Gundy brothers. It existed on so many different levels. You know, you couldn't script that.
There was always this feeling in the Miami arena that there were as many Knick fans in the arena as there were Heat fans.
There were so many Knick jerseys that at times it was tough to handle.
The series was played with that kind of venom between the cities. It was just played like we hate them and they hate us.
It was just inevitable that this was going to be a war.
There was Alonzo Mourning and Patrick Ewing, probably 2 of the best big men to play the game.
Enzo was one of those guys like, hey, I'm the pupil, but I've grown a lot. I'm not the same guy that I was that you remember at Georgetown, and I'm coming out here to kick your butt also.
We have definitely a brotherly type relationship off the court. When we were in between those lines, you know, it was a totally different attitude.
It's just like 2 gladiators that know each other, don't want to go against each other, but have to.
Let's get ready to rumble! Miami forces the issue. What a pass! Bodies falling all over Ewing. Oh, wow!
Patrick Ewing's 24 points led the Knicks to a Game 1 win in Miami. 2 nights later, Tim Hardaway's 34-point performance helped the Heat even the series with a Game 2 victory.
Tim Hardaway right now is going to work. I mean, he is taking over this game.
The series was just heating up. It was on to New York for Games 3 and 4.
We were not just going into a hostile game. You were going to a hostile city.
Walking into that building, the hatred that was being cast down upon us was like, you know, nothing I've felt in any arena ever.
In a defensive struggle, the Heat lost Game 3, and 1 night later, New York took control. The Knicks took a 3-1 lead in the series and were ready to close it out.
When they left after Game 4, they thought, okay, we're just going to wrap up this Miami Heat team. They're not good enough.
Not many teams have come back from 3-1, you know that.
No, but it's possible. We're not out of this. We're going back home, and we're going to take advantage of that.
On May 14th, the series shifted back to the Miami Arena for Game 5.
We were down 3-1. It was a must-win situation.
Here comes Hardaway. Loose ball. Hardaway finds Deshaun Leonard for 3.
In the fourth quarter, as the Heat's lead grew, so did the tension.
You will not do this in our house. No, not tonight.
It was a very emotional game. A lot of drama, a lot of guys throwing cheap elbows. It was just nasty out there. At the end, came to the free throw line. The game was over in my mind. Mr. Ward, you know, we kind of got tangled up a little bit, and I say to this day, I can't really remember what happened after that.
P.J. Brown throws Charlie Ward. Watch out. This one's going to get really ugly.
P.J. Brown is the most mild-mannered, polite, Mr. NBA citizenship, and to see him levitate Charlie Ward, and then the next thing you know, all heck is breaking loose.
People were banging their feet and pounding chairs, and it was just crazy.
The Game 5 brawl resulted in suspensions for Patrick Ewing, Allen Houston, and Charlie Ward for Game 6, Larry Johnson and John Starks for Game 7. Miami would play the rest of the series without P.J. Brown.
I was suspended, so I had to watch the game from my hotel room, which was excruciating.
Pat Riley said to his team that night at Madison Square Garden, the visitors' dressing room before Game 6, he said somebody else has got to play with the heart of P.J. Brown tonight.
And here's Oakley, rejected by Austin. What a play by Isaac Austin. So, oh no, a 3 for Zoe. Oh, he hit it! He hit it! Mourning strikes for 3. Game 7, here we come.
And it has come down to this, the 7th and final game of the Eastern Conference semifinal series.
It was like the Ultimate Fighting Championship, you know. It was just get us to the last round and they'll tap out.
On a Sunday afternoon, in front of a national television audience, NBA fans witnessed one of the greatest performances in Heat history.
After Zoe committed his 5th foul, Zoe went out, and there was a timeout, and you could just see the guy's face in the hole like, man, what we gonna do? And that's when I knew that I needed to take over the game right then and there.
He can take over a ball game. Fires again.
You know, Tim was Mr. Big. You know, I mean, he made the big shots.
Hardaway for 3.
That's what this game is all about. I mean, players will rise to the occasion.
Hardaway for 3.
And they will become remembered, you know, forever.
It is all over. Miami Heat have become the 6th team of the history of the NBA to come back from a 3-1 deficit.
In Miami's first ever appearance in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Heat faced the Chicago Bulls.
You know, it was just a matter of, hey, they got the best player on the planet on the other team, so it makes it quite difficult.
Jordan, perfect. The Chicago Bulls defeat the Miami Heat. They win the series in 5.
That was the team that I felt we could develop into a championship contender. You know, there was only one problem. Is that you had Michael Jordan in the Eastern Conference and the Chicago Bulls. And sometimes you can do the best job of anybody, but there's still one team that's so good that's going to be in your way.
Unfortunately, the Heat could not get past Michael Jordan and his Chicago Bulls. But this young franchise was making big strides, and it had the most successful season to date. But the best was yet to come. Thanks for watching this edition of Inside the Heat. I'm Eric Reed.
The Miami Heat entered a new era.
This is a building that people will remember.
You know, I love Miami Arena, but it's time really to move on.
Witness a fierce rivalry intensified.
A fight is broken out between Mourning and Johnson.
I remember saying to him, do you know what you just did?
And a lockout that would put a season in jeopardy.
It's about what is a fair share between owners and players.
It's almost like everybody's waiting for the bat phone to ring.
Not even the league's best defender could prevent the Heat's most agonizing moment.
Houston ducks under. Got it!
Just took all the air out of us.
That shot changed the direction of this franchise drastically.
A new home for the new millennium brings new hope.
Alonzo Mourning.
But an old foe conquers the dream and the era.
Weatherspoon shot, no good.
I knew walking off the court, it was the ending of an era.
Welcome to Inside the Heat. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eric Reed. We continue our celebration of 20 years of Heat basketball with episode number 4 in this special 6-part series. Heading into the summer of 1997, Miami had just finished their most successful season, 61 regular season wins, and their first ever trip to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now the Heat was focused on a different campaign, the quest for a new home.
The whole new arena, truthfully, started the day we moved into the old arena. It really was not going to make it.
The new arena was a very important part of the whole plan to make this team a significant part of the Eastern Conference landscape.
It was a difficult process, how and who would control an arena, whether it would be downtown or in Broward.
For a world-class Miami, change can start right here. We can turn this into a fantastic waterfront park.
We agreed to go with a concept that Tony Ritter, who was running Knight Ridder at the time, he put a group together to lobby to get this thing done in the waterfront, and it got caught up in the referendum.
But some politicians want to kill the new waterfront park. Vote no on question 284.
Whether you were an assistant with the team or, the head coach, everybody was doing their part to get this arena built.
I'm Tim Hardaway. I play for the Heat, and this is what you want from me.
The defending Atlantic Division champions began their 10th NBA season and their 3rd with Pat Riley by winning 20 of their first 29 games.
Can he get a shot up? Yes, he does! He won it! He won
While the heat was breaking through, a brand new waterfront arena was breaking ground.
Supporters here at Miami's just had a victory toast because this one is in the bag. The new arena is going to be built.
Let's get ready to rumble!
This is a building that people will remember. Right here at the port, right next to Bayside. I mean, the whole scene should be spectacular.
You won 55 games. You made it through the regular season. You won another division title. But we already learned at this point, it's not about what we get done in the regular season. It's about what you get done in the playoffs.
You won't believe the intensity when you get in those playoff series and what it's like and how your heart just freaking drops when you lose a game and how exhilarated you are when you win.
The 1998 playoffs are here, and as destiny would have it, it is the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks.
The 1998 playoffs opened at Miami Arena, and Tim Hardaway scored 34 points, leading Miami to a Game 1 win.
Hardaway step-back jumper. Kaboom!
2 nights later, the Knicks evened the series with a 10-point win.
And this best-of-5 series is officially tied at 1.
The series shifted to the Big Apple. Miami battled back to win Game 3.
For that moment, it was a great feeling. Miami had momentum.
Welcome back to Madison Square Garden, Game 4, Round 1.
The two teams had similar kind of styles. They would beat you up. They would grind it out. Nobody was going to back down.
Facing elimination on their own home court, the Knicks were on the verge of winning by 5, forcing a decisive 5th game in Miami.
I looked at the clock and there's no time left. There's a second to go in the game. I said, let's just get out of town, let's go home. And the next thing I know, they're toe-to-toe.
A fight is broken out between Mourning and Johnson. And Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson fisticuffs as the game ends.
We was playing it, and those two was yapping all game.
They were rivals, and they were both fierce competitors. And you put the two together, and it was combustible.
There's been bad blood between Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning for a long time.
I look down, and I see Jeff Van Gundy on Zoe's leg. I'm like, what are you doing?
Jeff Van Gundy is hanging onto the leg of Alonzo Mourning.
He looked like just this little kid hanging onto this great big tree trunk.
The one image that stood in everybody's mind was the conversation after the ejection between Pat and Alonzo.
I remember saying to him, do you know what you just did? You know what you just did, Zoe?
I'll never forget the shot of Pat Riley outside the visitors' locker room at Madison Square Garden, leaning against the wall. I think that's the way the whole Heat Nation felt. We didn't have Alonzo Mourning, but the Knicks were playing without Patrick Ewing, so I felt like Game 5 was still even.
They came out ready to play. They made unbelievable shots after shots after shots.
Starks and Oakley and Allen Houston. I mean, they had a great game against us. Beat us by 15.
A postseason with great hope and expectation was suddenly done, and there wasn't a thing you could do about it.
It was first taste of really having your hearts really broken.
The NBA is going to bring you to your knees. It's going to lift you up into the heavens. I mean, that's the nature of competition. You can't make mistakes. It's probably the most important lesson that Zoe, ever learned.
We are a product of defining moments in our life. The experiences, those particular experiences, define us as people, who we are today, and that particular experience, was a very humbling experience. I was very remorseful, and it changed my whole mentality and approach to the game. Sometimes you have to, you have to go through some adverse situations in order to be successful.
Inside the Heat is brought to you by your South Florida Mercedes-Benz dealers. Love what you drive.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. After losing to the Knicks in the 1998 playoffs, Pat Riley went right back to work to ready his team for the following season. However, the 1998-99 season almost never happened. With no collective bargaining agreement in place between the league's owners and players, a lockout was enforced, and the season was in jeopardy.
Have a breaking story into the NBC6 newsroom.
The lockout has put NBA hoops on hold.
We was ready to start a long journey again, trying to fulfill our championship dream, and it was cut short.
It's about what is a fair share between owners and players.
It's almost like everybody's waiting for the bat phone to ring. There's no call a day, Where am I going to be tomorrow? Where am I going to be next week?
November came and went without pro basketball. Finally, in late December, an agreement was reached between the owners and the players' union. There would be a season, shortened and condensed to 50 games over 3 months, beginning in February.
That makes us feel good that we've come to a positive conclusion, and now we can get back to work.
Finally, they said, okay, there's going to be this 50-game schedule.
Every single game was important. It was a mad dash to 30 wins.
That was the first time I've ever experienced back-to-back-to-back games.
Mullen Junction.
Coach believed that, defense wins championships, and that's where it all started.
Because we were together for a while and been through some battles together, we knew what the system was.
To be a good defensive player, you got to play with a lot of heart and attitude and hustle.
They were the defensive team of that era, and it was anchored by the best defensive center in the NBA.
Mourning blocked the shot.
Mourning would lead the league in blocked shots with almost 4 a game and was named the 1999 Defensive Player of the Year. He was also a first-team All-NBA selection and finished second in the league's MVP balloting.
Defense isn't something that you teach. It's pretty much all effort, will, determination, and heart.
They went 33-17, and they won another Atlantic Division championship, and off we go to the playoffs, and guess who's waiting for us again in the first round? The Knicks.
In their third straight playoff confrontation, the Heat and Knicks were back at it in a best-of-5 first-round series. During the first 4 games, the teams would trade victories, New York winning games 1 and 3, Miami games 2 and 4.
The Heat get it done and win game 4.
Setting up a deciding game 5.
It was one of those games where the crowd was involved. It was a physical game. It was beat-em-up basketball.
They knew us. We knew them. There were no secrets. It was going to always come down to, once again, that last possession.
Game 5 was the final playoff game held in Miami Arena, and it did come down to the very last painful second.
The game was nip and tuck all the way, but I felt that we had control in the last 2 or 3 minutes, and we were ahead in the ball game. And I definitely wanted the ball in Tim's hands. But on a possession, we couldn't get the ball into Tim, and Terry Porter handled the basketball as a point guard. We went to Tim on a catch and shoot, and the ball flipped up in the air, and we never got a shot off. And then the play was Sprewell, and Porter was right in front of me.
Terry Porter having Latrell Sprewell's trapped on the baseline, and Latrell has nowhere to go. They don't have any timeouts. They can't call timeout. Terry Porter hasn't locked in, and the worst thing that could happen to us is the ball goes out of bounds.
If we get possession of the ball, we're going to win the game.
And to this day, depending on who you are, you'll tell whether off Terry Porter's leg or Latrell Sprewell's leg.
Did Terry Porter touch the ball when it went out of bounds? Did a fingernail change the course of history?
They gave him an opportunity to set up for a play.
It was a play that we used to run in New York called triangle, and we did not defend it correctly. To this day, I should have put Keith Askins in the game defensively, not to play Allen Houston, but to play the ball. Marley did his job on a lock and trail on Allen Houston. Ball came in from Charlie Ward. Keith, I know, would have reacted in a way that would have closed that gap down. Once he got through the gap, the floater was just too easy for him.
It's like puts up this little floater.
It just seemed to bounce, and it just bounced. It was almost like time stood still, and the arena just got so quiet, and, which way is the ball going to go? And everybody was just, not again.
It drops in, and you're just sick to your stomach. And then you look at the players, and everyone was just like, oh, how could this be?
The Allen Houston shot just went in. That just took all the air out of us. That type of moment where you just went, oh, it's almost, you can't explain it, but you left totally helpless and empty.
It was absolute shot to the gut, knock you to your knees. Everyone just shell-shocked walking out of the building.
I remember Latrell Sprewell walking around pounding on his chest right in front of our bench. I could have decked him myself.
That shot changed the direction of this franchise drastically.
We were a better team than the Knicks that year, but that shot fell in, and they moved on, and we went home.
About as excruciating a loss, even worse than the year before, because I felt in that lockout shortened year that we could have taken it all the way to the finals.
All those scars, what made us really thirst and want to win here, because we had been so close.
It was just the worst moment. It was this sudden victory for New York and this sudden heartache for Miami.
We had a team, we had a hope, we had championship aspirations. This rivalry had gotten out of hand, and boom, did we deserve that bounce? It went in, and we ended up going down in defeat.
Any one particular moment that you can point to and say, God, I remember having my heart ripped out of my chest, it was that moment.
Inside the Heat is brought to you by your South Florida Mercedes-Benz dealers. Love what you drive.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. A devastating loss to the Knicks in the '99 playoffs was a huge blow for the Miami Heat, but there were better things on the horizon. A new arena for the new millennium was well on its way.
The Miami Heat began the 1999-2000 season, winning 15 of their first 19 games.
With another block! Whoa.
While the Heat was on fire, the franchise was on the brink of a huge transition. A midseason move to a brand new home was on the horizon, putting an end to an 11-year run at the Miami Arena.
Hardaway's three. What a shot by Tim Hardaway! Hardaway!
As the Heat were working hard, so too were the construction workers at the American Airlines Arena.
These guys are building your home here.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Y'all doing a great job. Looking forward to getting in here.
Out with the old and in with the new. With Miami Arena clearly in sight, half a dozen Heat players got a tour of their still under construction new home.
You can expect that this is going to be by far the best arena in the NBA.
I remember taking the tour when it was under construction. It was brand new. It's almost like buying your first luxury car off the lot.
Even though Miami Arena was great for us and we had great times and it was a great venue for us, I know Mr. Aronson, our owner, want to take it to another level, not only for us but for the city and for our fans.
It was a good vision that Mickey and Pat had, and the fact that they were able to make it happen was crucial, not only for the Miami Heat but also for the people of Miami to have a world-class venue.
I love Miami Arena, but we also knew that we had to get serious about, the product down here. It was a great place to play, a lot of great memories there, a lot of fun times there, but it was time really to move on.
In just 23 months, the American Airlines Arena came to fruition. With the state-of-the-art waterfront facility ready to open, South Florida's own Gloria Estefan hosted the party of the century to welcome the Heat's new house into the new millennium.
Gloria started singing to a sold-out crowd. She's not stopping until we bring in this new millennium.
That memory of that concert that she put on was an unbelievable memory, and then to follow it 2 days later with the opening basketball game here.
On January 2nd, 2000, the Miami Heat hosted the Orlando Magic in the first game played at the brand new American Airlines Arena.
The new era in Miami Heat basketball. A sellout crowd of over 19,600 expected here tonight to see the Heat's brand new house.
You have to condition yourself physically, mentally, spiritually.
There comes a time when you have to plant your feet, stand firm, and make a point about who you are. First jump ball in the new house. Shaw with a block! Marley for three. Under! He hit it! Under!
It was home sweet home for the Heat as Miami went 22-5 in the new American Airlines Arena and won the Atlantic Division for the fourth consecutive year. The Heat experience was live and electrifying. In late April, not even a power outage in downtown Miami could dim the excitement of the Heat experience.
Fans were kind of restless until I started doing that, and then it just turned into just watching me. It was pretty fun.
When the Heat and Jazz clinched divisional titles on April 16, 2000, they became the 10th and 11th teams in history to win 4 or more consecutive NBA divisional championships.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. By the end of the 1999-2000 season, the Heat had won 52 games and a fourth straight Atlantic Division title. Alonzo Mourning again led the league in block shots and was named Defensive Player of the Year for the second consecutive season. Mourning brought his Heat to the playoffs for the fifth straight year, and this time Miami would be matched up against the Detroit Pistons in the first round and would be without their all-star guard, Tim Hardaway.
Before a sellout crowd in the brand new American Airlines Arena, Miami took a 2-0 series lead led by Anthony Carter, Alonzo Mourning, and Jamal Mashburn.
Look out for the lead. Big play by the Mashman.
That was a good feeling, especially being in a new environment and seeing that atmosphere.
The Heat have won! The Heat have won Game 2!
The series would end in Detroit with a Heat win in Game 3, completing a first-round sweep, another franchise first. The Heat moved on to the Eastern Conference semifinals against a team they knew all too well. For the fourth consecutive postseason, Miami would once again battle with the New York Knicks.
It was just inevitable that the two of us would find our way to meet each other.
These guys were our arch rival. They were our nemesis. They were the ones that was always right there in front of us. And I feel like we want it. We got to go take it.
The series began in Miami with Tim Hardaway back in the Heat starting lineup. But it was Alonzo Mourning's 26 points that would help the Heat take Game 1.
Mourning. No way. Alonzo Mourning.
In Game 2, the Knicks would even the series with a 6-point win in Miami.
Ewing over Shell. Tough shot that drops.
In Game 3 at Madison Square Garden, the Heat and the Knicks would battle fiercely through 4 quarters and into overtime.
Carter with 5, drives, lofts it up, tipped down!
As the series continued, both teams would hold serve on their own home court. The Knicks won Game 4 in New York.
Let's get ready to rumble!
And the Heat took a 3-2 series lead with a hard-fought win in Game 5.
Marley from deep. Oh, my. Did you say deep? That was in Broward County, folks.
Miami now had the opportunity to close out the series with a Game 6 win in New York.
Time to play. It's time to finish.
Carter for 3 and the win! No good! New York wins!
Everybody knew every game was going to go down to the wire. Every single series was the 7th game, and every 7th game went down to the wire.
For the 4th year in a row, that deciding game would be in Miami, and once again would be decided in the final seconds of the final game.
We had control of the game with about a minute to go, and then we made a defensive error that opened up a Patrick Ewing dunk.
I went for a steal on Patrick when I could have just played behind him and played him tough and made him take a tougher shot.
They're coming inside to Ewing. And Ewing with a jam as Alonzo Mourning, for some reason, gambled and went over the top, leaving Ewing a clear path to the bucket.
With the Knicks ahead by 1 point, the Heat had one final chance to win the game and the series, following a timeout with 7 seconds to play.
I kick it out to Mash, thinking Mash would take that shot, and instead of shooting the ball, Mash passed it to Spoon.
When I saw Patrick Ewing running at me, I understood what type of defense they would play. So if I pump faked or I tried to drive, I knew there would be a collapse and somebody would be open. And I swung at the Clarence Weatherspoon. But what I wasn't expecting was Clarence Weatherspoon, I guess, to hesitate or ball fake with it.
Marley makes a stab, can't get it, and Sprewell with the ball.
Here it is, an opportunity that was missed, and it was nothing we could do about it. It was Game 7. New York came in and got it done, whereas we didn't take care of business as we should have.
It was just horrible, losing again to them by 1 point. When we knew we had the better team, we always had the better team, but they just prevailed some type of way all other time.
That game just felt like, the Knicks had just ripped all the life out of us, because preparation that whole year was, hey, this is the year we're going to win a championship, and we felt it. We felt like we were the team.
Losing that series, I knew walking off the court that was the end of my Heat career. But not just because I didn't take the shot or we lost that game, but I felt it was time for everybody to move on at that particular time.
3 years in a row, heartbreaking, deciding game losses to the same team. It was just too much frustration to bear.
And it wound up coming to a 15-foot jumper. 15-foot jumper that bounced out, determined 48 months of our lives.
Without even anybody saying anything to me, an era was over. And this thing would be dismantled. There would be a few pieces that stay apart, but it was done.
The ball just didn't bounce our way, and all those series came down to one play, one shot, one mistake. It was very, very disheartening.
This would be the final chapter in the Heat-Knicks playoff rivalry, clearly the NBA's best rivalry in the 90s. It was 4 straight years of playoff battles that all went the distance. But after being eliminated by New York for the 3rd straight year, changes were coming for Miami. Thank you for watching this edition of Inside the Heat. I'm Eric Reed.
the quest for a championship continued, the Miami Heat reloaded.
It was time to change the core of the team.
I'm very, very, very happy to be home.
But that quest would suffer a huge setback.
Alonzo Mourning will not be playing professional basketball this season.
Through the struggles came new light.
The Miami Heat select Caron Butler.
And the light shined even brighter.
Oh, what a play! He's Superman!
He helped make basketball matter in South Florida again.
The young and talented Miami Heat gave South Florida a season to remember.
This was the season that made fans fall back in love with the Miami Heat.
This is for the win! It's good! And the NBA is back in Miami.
Welcome to Inside the Heat. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eric Reed. We continue our celebration of 20 years of Heat basketball with episode number 5 in this special 6-part series. In the 2000 playoffs, Miami faced their rivals, the New York Knicks, for the 4th year in a row. And for the 3rd consecutive time, the outcome was devastating. Those 3 playoff eliminating losses, 2 of them by 1 point, remain some of the most painful moments in Heat history. And after all those playoff battles and heartaches, it was time for change. And heading into the summer of 2000, change would come, and the Miami Heat roster would be dramatically different.
The last 2 years in a row were nothing but misery. I felt that it was time to change.
In the summer of 2000, Riley pulled the trigger on 2 trades that resulted in major changes for the Heat.
I want to see if y'all really want them down here. Everybody say, Eddie, Eddie, Eddie.
On August 2nd, the Heat sent 5 players to Charlotte, including P.J. Brown and Jamal Mashburn, to acquire Pompano Beach's own Eddie Jones and forward Anthony Mason in a 9-player trade.
I'm very, very happy to be a Heat. I'm very, very happy to be home.
Then, just 4 weeks later, in a 3-way trade with Cleveland and Portland, the Heat acquired forward Brian Grant from the Trailblazers.
This team is a perfect fit for me.
Certainly to give up Mashburn and P.J. Brown as a part of the trade was giving up an important piece of our team, but we felt like both Eddie and Brian had a chance to come into this franchise and grow and make it better and make it stronger.
Time to win the gold.
In the fall of 2000, Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway represented the Heat and the nation on the USA men's basketball team that captured the gold medal at the Olympic Games in Sydney, Australia.
It was exciting to stand on the medal stand to represent our country.
A lot of people don't win gold medals, and you have to preserve that, and that's something in the memories that you just keep forever. It was just great for us to win that together.
But that feeling of elation and excitement soon turned into fear and concern.
We were coming back from the Olympics. On the plane, Zoe had me look at his legs, which were swollen, which was really unusual.
We touched his thigh, and when we touched it, the skin went down, and it took its time in coming back up, and it was some freaky stuff.
And the next day, training camp opened, and he got a physical, and that's when we came up with there being a kidney problem.
I've been in this business for 25 years. I've never heard of this. And they said to me, well, 10 years ago, nobody had heard of this.
When Coach Riley broke the news to us, he just walked out of the gym and just stared at the bay for a while. And I had never seen Coach Riley do that.
I remember getting on my knees, truly surrendering and what's really going on.
And good evening, everyone. The announcement leaving South Florida and Heat fans everywhere stunned.
Alonzo Mourning will not be playing professional basketball this season.
The diagnosis by pathology was something called focal glomerular sclerosis.
This is a disease in which the filters of the kidney leak protein into the urine. If you continue to leak large amounts of protein into the urine for a long period of time, eventually you would need dialysis or a transplant.
The main objective is to get me healthy, possibly do the thing that I know and love, and that's the game of basketball.
My first thing is he going to be alive? Whatever you want to do, I'm with you, but I just don't want you to die.
The last thing that was on my mind, or even on his mind, or we were even thinking about, was whether or not he'd ever play again.
He's the most well-conditioned athlete that we've ever had. And then to find out he was sick, it
just couldn't believe it.
Zoe's illness devastated his teammates, but also brought them together as Pat Riley rallied the team.
He brought us together through blood, sweat, and tears. That's what I like to call it. I remember that was the best feeling, proving people wrong, that this is what a team's all about. When a piece goes down, other pieces have to step up.
One player who stepped up was Anthony Mason, who had an all-star season as the Heat rolled along with 42 wins in late March when Miami had another surprise.
Here he comes, Alonzo Mourning.
On March 27, 2001, Zoe was back.
For Zoe, look out!
It was wonderful to see Alonzo regain his health and be able to return. It was uplifting to the team, to the franchise, and to the community.
Dumps it home, and the Heat win!
The word warrior don't do justice. The word passion don't do justice. It just doesn't describe how committed Alonzo is, just refuses to be stopped by any challenges.
Miami finished the 2000-2001 season with a 50-32 record and made it to the NBA playoffs. In the first round, the Heat faced the Charlotte Hornets, meeting face-to-face with former Heat players.
It was like coming home to play against your family, so it was a very, very tough situation.
The Heat suffered their worst playoff losses in franchise history, losing by 26 points each night at home.
Everything that we tried to throw at them, they would counter it, and they had to answer it.
Jamal Mashburn averaged 25 points in the Hornets' first 2 wins.
Oh, my! Mashburn again!
In Charlotte, the Hornets won Game 3 by 15 points, 94-79, and swept Miami right out of the playoffs in the first round.
Probably the ugliest playoff series in franchise history. Nothing went right, the wrong matchup at the wrong time.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. Coming off a disappointing 2001 playoff appearance, the Miami Heat would enter its most difficult era under Coach Pat Riley. The Heat would struggle over the next 2 seasons and was in the midst of a major transition geared towards rebuilding.
Prior to the 2001-2002 season, the Heat would say goodbye to one of their all-time greatest players when they traded 5-time All-Star point guard Tim Hardaway.
It was a great way for Tim to end his career in Miami, but it was also sad because he wanted to keep playing and injuries sort of stole it from him.
What a shot by Tim Hardaway!
The Heat would struggle to start the season, winning only 5 of their first 28 games. They would finish with a 36-46 record and miss the playoffs for the first time in Pat Riley's coaching career.
It was one of those years where you thought that he was going to be able to put together a team that would make the playoffs anyway, because he's such a great coach and he does wonders. You just never really seen Pat Riley in that situation before with the losing team.
It's tough. We just all kind of got through it the best we could and was hoping for a better future.
Miami's poor record positioned the Heat with the 10th pick in the 2002 NBA draft.
The Miami Heat select Caron Butler from the University of Connecticut.
That's the most emotional pick. We had gone through a tough year, a losing year. It was important that the player we picked at 10 was going to be a good player for us and be a part of our rebuilding process.
I'll never forget draft night when Caron Butler was still there at number 10, and Miami was very fortunate to have that happen.
3 years from now, people are going to be talking about this kid who slipped to 10 the same way they talk about Paul Pierce, who slipped to 10 also.
Pat Riley got a lot of confidence in me, and I'm not going to let him down, and I'm not going to let myself down. I'm going to come in, and we're going to restore the feeling back in Miami.
The Heat would select another Butler in the second round. Rasul Butler, no relation to Caron, would be taken with the 53rd pick. Together, the Butlers would launch Miami's new youth movement.
I run through a brick wall for this organization because they gave me an opportunity to live my dream.
Everybody was expecting it to be a better season. Certainly Caron and Rasul were the hopes that they could develop into something, but they would be building blocks.
While the team was building new young players, its cornerstone would be stricken with another blow. Due to complications in his ongoing battle with kidney disease, Heat center Alonzo Mourning would sit out the entire 02-03 season.
Their advice was that I take some time off because of the added stress on the body would make it difficult for me to recover faster.
It was a total washout when Zoe walked into my office in September and said, I'm done. I was actually planning on having a competitive year, and it changed our whole philosophy as to what we were going to do that year.
Without Zoe, the Heat were on their way to another disappointing season and failed to make the playoffs for the second year in a row.
I took the hit, but I felt it was important for me to coach those teams, not somebody else, not to turn over two rebuilding teams.
Yes, those were two very dark and difficult years, but there were only two. In a way, Pat Riley really sacrificed himself for those 2 years for what would eventually follow.
Losing the way we lost, they didn't even make the playoffs. I always believed it was going to get better.
We knew that this was necessary to take the next step. And Coach Riley mentioned to everybody, okay, here's the plan. And the players that we have, we're going to fight and try to win each game. But that the franchise would be moving in a new direction, a new era.
The end of the disappointing 02-03 season took Miami to Toronto on April 15th. Both the Heat and the Raptors have the same regular season records and would be battling for a 2003 draft pick.
In this game, you know that the loser is going to get the 4th pick in the upcoming draft, and the team that wins would pick 5th.
We never play to lose. We're two teams that are having bad years, but this isn't a joke. So then you ended up seeing a good basketball game.
And indeed, the Heat won.
The Heat end their 15th season with a victory.
Even though a lot of fans want to see us get the 4th pick, I think that the true fans were probably at home going, that's good, they ain't give up.
They played to win that day, and then even with the 5th pick, rather than the 4th, they won bigger than ever.
It was the worst victory a team could have at the time that ultimately turned it into the best victory because of, obviously, the draft that came and who came with it next.
Inside the Heat is brought to you by your South Florida Mercedes-Benz dealers. Love what you drive.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat and our historical review of 20 years of Heat basketball. Miami finished the 2002-2003 season with a 25-57 record. But that suffering led to something very special in the form of the 5th pick in the 2003 NBA draft. With that selection, Pat Riley chose a diamond in the rough out of Marquette University.
It was a dreary, cold, rainy, half-snowy night in Milwaukee. And there I am in this health club with all these Marquette fans. These Milwaukee fans are now all in there pedaling away and watching Marquette play in the playoffs against the University of Kentucky. And I watched the kid play. He was absolutely incredible in this game. That's when I got my first real good look at him, and then obviously after that I began to start to study more and more of his tapes and, find out more and more about him.
The Miami Heat are on the clock.
The Heat got the 5th pick. What do? Everyone was debating. Dwayne Wade, triple-double, leads Marquette to the Final Four. They took the best player available.
With the 5th pick in the 2003 NBA draft, the Miami Heat select Dwayne Wade from Marquette University.
We were very fortunate to be able to make the right call that night. Dwayne, changed everything for us.
The Heat added a future and perennial all-star, but at the same time were parting ways with their signature player and their ultimate warrior. After spending 8 years with the Heat, Alonzo Mourning signed with the New Jersey Nets as a free agent in July of 2003.
Pat and the Heat had to make the very painful but realistic decision that we're rebuilding a new team, and we got to let go of the past and move forward.
While Miami was moving forward without Mourning, they were discovering a future front court starter in Miami native Udonis Haslem, who made a lasting impression during the summer at the Heat's free agent camp.
Way to run!
He came in as a free agent, and from the first day I said, who is this guy? Well, I said, that's not Udonis Haslem. Is that Udonis Haslem from Florida? Yeah, that's it. What happened to him? He lost 70 pounds. He was 235 pounds, about 6% body fat, and he just dominated the whole week. This story is a great story because it's really a story about a player who has great heart, and he's one of the few guys in this league who feels privileged to be an NBA player.
Later that summer, Pat Riley made another move, acquiring free agent Lamar Odom.
What happened in that situation? Yeah. Oh, we were. Oh, what's up, baby?
Let's go, baby.
You ready? My dog is here. They're calling me. All right. Thanks a lot.
Lamar Odom is a player we had tried to get for a number of years, and should be remembered amongst the greatest players who've ever played in a Miami Heat uniform.
It's my new crew.
In early September, the roster was completed with the addition of free agent point guard Rafer Alston. But just before the Heat's 16th season began, there was one more big change to come.
The news came as a shock to most of the sports world.
Pat Riley resigned as coach of the Miami Heat.
I knew that after I'd signed Lamar, I knew that I was not going to coach the next year. I just knew it. And I told Stan in the middle of the summer, be ready, be ready. He never believed me.
This team needs a new voice, and we have the right man at the right time.
He's just a mirror of Pat Riley. Same demands, same system.
You're sliding all the way over, head even with the ball, our hands change.
Just 4 days after being named head coach, Stan Van Gundy took the Heat to Philadelphia to open the regular season against the 76ers. It was South Florida's first look at the Heat's rookie sensation.
Here goes Dwayne. You gotta love this young fella.
When he got on the court against the Philadelphia 76ers and he started playing, I said, I've never seen anybody like this. This guy is special.
We began to see the inklings of what was to come, and we got to see the beginning of Dwayne Wade and what he could do.
Oh, my goodness! Dwayne Wade!
There is something special about a player that comes to you through the draft and then, makes that quick ascension to being a superstar.
Dwayne Wade symbolized the new hope for the Heat.
Wade would miss 21 games his rookie season with injuries, including 2 early on, as the Heat lost their first 7 games and 10 out of their first 15.
Nobody ever panicked. Nobody pointed fingers. And they just worked on getting better every day. They didn't worry about the record.
I knew they were good. Players kept developing. Lamar kept getting better. Dwayne kept getting better.
He helped make basketball matter in South Florida again.
Oh, what a play! Oh, my God! He jumped right out of the building! He's Superman!
We thought that he could be a really good player. I don't think anybody knew that he could be as great a player as turned out to be.
On March 2nd, Miami was still 11 games under 500 before turning their season around by winning 17 of their last 21 games.
Wade, nice one for Odogu. Slams it through.
A young Heat team started to rise, and on March 26th, in a nationally televised game against Dallas, America saw what South Florida was buzzing about.
Butler's going to trigger the inbound. It's Alston. This is for the win. It's good! Are you kidding me? And the NBA is back in Miami.
It was an incredible run. They got healthy. They came together at the right time. And, this was the season that made fans fall back in love with the Miami Heat.
In 2003, at age 21, Dwayne Wade was the youngest player to ever start an opening night for the Miami Heat.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. After 2 years out, Miami was back in the NBA playoffs with a team that re-energized and excited Heat fans. And they were back in black, enjoying one of the hottest young teams in the NBA that season. It was in the first round of the playoffs, though, against the Charlotte Hornets, where many would discover a shining star in Heat rookie Dwayne Wade.
A few months ago, we couldn't even give away a ticket. So now we're selling out the arena. We're in the playoffs. And, for me, I was just real pumped, real amped, and real excited to be in that situation.
Let's go, Heat! I was so happy about just making it to the playoffs. It just mattered to me just having fun being out there.
I don't think I was nervous for the national attention. I think I was just nervous because it was my first time in the playoffs. Didn't know what to expect.
Heat all the way tonight, baby. You see.
That first playoff game when everybody was in black and the place was full and loud, it was incredible.
I think the opposing team came into the building and it was just like, whoa, blown away by the whole feeling.
In Game 1 in this best-of-7 series, the Heat and Hornets looked evenly matched. With the game tied at 79 with just over 10 seconds remaining, Stan Van Gundy put the ball in the hands of his rookie star.
I was shocked that he called my number in the playoffs. All I wanted, I was like, just get the ball in my hand, just get the ball in my hand. And once I got it, I just knew that God would take care of the rest.
He could have gone to Caron Butler, could have gone to Lamar Odom. Stan knew.
Wade puts it up. It's good! Yeah, baby! Stan Van Gundy went to the rookie and he delivered.
I think right then you noticed that not only is Dwayne a great player, but he's a player who wants the responsibility at the end of games
Dwayne was not the least bit afraid of that last play. In fact, I think he was extremely happy that the play got called for him.
Suddenly the rest of the country started noticing who Dwayne Wade was.
That was the moment you look back and you said, wow, he can be something special.
All 5 starters scored in double figures as the Heat won Game 2 at home by 30 points.
For the first time in Heat history, Miami takes a 2-0 lead in a best-of-7 series.
But the Hornets in New Orleans answered back on their home court, winning games 3 and 4 to even the series at 2.
We're going home, and we're going to have a crowd on our side, and we just got to come with a little more energy, and we'll be fine.
Miami got a combined 46 points from Wade and Eddie Jones and won Game 5 by 4 points.
2 to shoot. Wade gets it off. It's good. With a second left on the shot clock, he Dwayne'd it.
Back in New Orleans, the Hornets won Game 6, extending the series to a winner-take-all 7th game in Miami.
We will go to an ultimate game in this first-round best-of-7.
With strong performances from Miami's top 6 players, Caron Butler scored 23 points, and Miami prevailed in Game 7, advancing to the second round.
Miami, you are in. How about these Heat?
It was a good series to go out there and just battle. When we won it, we felt good. You know, everybody looked at me, okay, I got a cut here, a scar here, my eyes black. Let's go to the next one.
It was a great feeling of conquest and triumph and sort of that feeling, we are back.
In the second round, Miami was matched up against top-seeded Indiana. At home, the Pacers won the first 2 games by double figures.
Miller's the guy that's trying to get free with 1.6, lofts one, and it goes!
We go in home, just like New Orleans went home and won 2 games. That's what we have to do.
Down 2 games to none, but back at home, the Heat battled back and evened the series.
Going to try to go inside on Harrington. And
right now, the series is even, and we couldn't be happier.
The Pacers won Game 5 in Indiana, then eliminated the Heat with a 3-point Game 6 win in Miami.
So the magical season is over for the Heat.
It was still a good series, but once it was over, it was like, you know, we did give it our best.
It was in some ways unexpected how much fun that season actually turned out to be, and you knew more was in the offing.
The 2004 season had come to an end, but there was more gained than lost. The Miami Heat was back on the map with a young, exciting team and a rising star. But more amazing than Miami's quick return to the playoffs was what happened next. The biggest acquisition in Heat history. Thank you for watching this very special edition of Inside the Heat. I'm Eric Reed.
It was a new era for the Miami Heat when the sport's biggest megastar arrived and changed South Florida's landscape.
I'm going to bring a championship to Miami, I promise.
As soon as we got Shaq, we all just believed this is a championship team.
Shaq, oh! The Diesel says, welcome to the postseason.
The Heat were red hot.
2 hands, yeah!
But a star's injury would derail their first ever chance at infamy.
If we were healthy, we would have been in the NBA Finals.
Determined more than ever, Miami bounced back and reloaded.
This team was built to win a championship.
In their 18th season, 15 strong set their sights on championship glory.
Miami has won! Miami is NBA champ!
Reflect on 20 years of thrill, heartache, and championship joy.
A great success story that went from expansion to champion in that first 20 years.
Welcome to Inside the Heat. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eric Reed. We continue our celebration of 20 years of Heat basketball with this final episode of this very special 6-part series. The story of the 2004-2005 Heat really began soon after a successful run deep into the 2004 playoffs. Now, after selecting teen sensation Darrell Wright in the draft, Pat Riley made the most significant trade in Heat history when he acquired superstar Shaquille O'Neal from the Los Angeles Lakers. Together with Dwayne Wade, this dynamic duo would take the Heat to unprecedented heights.
I remember Coach came back from L.A. after he had met over there with them and said, they're going to trade Shaquille O'Neal.
But when he called me about Shaq, it was like, yeah, sure.
As long as we can keep Dwayne Wade out of the deal, then we would make the deal.
Wade gets it off. It's good.
I asked Pat only one thing. I said, do me a favor, before we pull the trigger on this deal, go visit Shaq, make sure he wants to be here, make sure he wants to win another ring.
As it's going on, you're kind of pinching yourself a little bit, saying, can we really make this one happen?
Pat went to see him, picked up the phone call, and he said, we got our big man.
We're following the developments of the O'Neal deal tonight.
The blockbuster trade was announced this afternoon.
The daddy has moved on.
You thought it was a New York Stock Exchange. The phones would not stop ringing. People wanting and buying tickets. The excitement building was just unbelievable.
As soon as we got Shaq, everybody, coaches, players, staff, and people of Miami, the fans, we all just believed, okay, this is a championship team now.
The day that Shaq came on board, he called me and I was happy.
I knew that they called for a big parade, and before I knew it, there was this huge crowd downtown.
Hello, Miami. I said hello, Miami. I want y'all to remember this feeling right here. I'm going to bring a championship to Miami, I promise.
After opening the season with a 23-point win at New Jersey, Miami rolls out the red carpet for the home opener.
Rasul over the top there. Shaq got in deep. A two-hand jam, and he is fouled.
The Heat beat the Cavaliers and dazzled their fans. The new and improved Heat gelled instantly, winning their first 4 games and 14 consecutive wins in December, including a Christmas Day return to L.A. for the big fella.
Shaquille O'Neal.
On March 1st, Pat Riley would add one more very special piece to the championship puzzle by re-signing 7-time All-Star and 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, Alonzo Mourning.
Love that I have for the fans has always been there, and the feeling is definitely mutual.
Welcome home, Alonzo Mourning. We're glad to have you back. Blocked by Zone! How about that for a welcome back home?
Live from American Airlines Arena in Miami, it's the NBA playoffs.
Then came the red zone, and all the fans came to the playoffs in a sea of red.
So when we out there in the playoffs, you go out there with the man state of, I'm going to do whatever I got to do to help us win.
Shaq, a monster right-hand jam. The Diesel says, welcome to the postseason.
Miami stormed through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs.
Oh, my goodness.
Sweeping both series versus the Nets and the Wizards.
A two-hand alley-oop slam. The Miami Heat clinch the series with a 4-game sweep of the Washington Wizards.
I'm just happy to be, man, in this locker room, these guys enjoying this, man.
In their first conference finals appearance in 8 years, Miami would go toe-to-toe with the defending NBA champion, Detroit Pistons.
The Heat is put together in this 1 year and built to win it all right now. The Pistons are a group that have been there year after year.
Wade going to drive the lane.
And a right-hand jam. Flash to the basket.
Tayshaun Prince drives baseline left. And a jam.
The team split the first 4 games of the series, and Miami took a 3-2 lead in Game 5, but suffered a costly injury to Dwayne Wade.
I knew it was an intercostal strain, and I remember turning to whoever was at my left, and I won't repeat exactly what I said to him, but I said, this is going to be difficult.
Just made a basic crossover move to a pull-up jumper. On my way down the court, just felt the pain, saw pain. Then as I kept going down the court, it got worse and worse and worse.
Just one victory away from their first NBA Finals appearance, the Heat went to Detroit for Game 6, and the entire nation watched and wondered, would Wade be able to play?
Everybody just watched Dwayne Wade warm up, and it didn't look good. He didn't move very quickly, he looked like he was in pain, and he wound up not playing in Game 6. Just one win away from getting to the NBA Championship Series for the first time.
And the Detroit Pistons force a 7th and deciding game.
Got a game on Monday. Just going to decide everything.
This is a game you wait your whole life for and you dream about being in, especially a player of Dwayne's magnitude.
Here we go! Game number 7.
You really felt like the magic was going to happen. Wade played his best.
Off the glass and in! Oh my goodness, how'd he do that?
And the Pistons played with such great poise. And if there was a team that you felt could win on somebody else's court, it was them.
A shocker here in Miami.
Just let a phenomenal season slip away.
We wanted to get back to that opportunity, and the next time we weren't going to let anything get in the way.
Inside the Heat is brought to you by your South Florida Mercedes-Benz dealers. Love what you drive.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. After advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals for the second time in franchise history, the Heat had great expectations for the 05-06 season. Those expectations heightened in early August when the Heat took part in the largest trade in NBA history and acquired Antoine Walker, Jason Williams, and James Posey. Then in late September, the Heat added perennial All-Star point guard Gary Payton to an already impressive roster. They would become Miami's forever team.
Miami's 18th NBA season got off to a rocky start. In mid-December, Stan Van Gundy announced his resignation as the Heat's head coach. Stepping back in to fill the void was Heat president and former head coach Pat Riley.
When the change occurred, there was an instantaneous surge.
The Heat would finish the season with 52 victories, earning their 6th division title and the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference.
There was some kind of an interesting confidence about our team that kind of gave you a sense that we could be better than we thought we could be.
Live from American Airlines Arena in Miami, it's the NBA playoffs.
The 2006 NBA playoffs were white hot. Heat fans were excited.
Let's go, Heat!
In the first round of the playoffs, the Heat took on the Chicago Bulls, winning the first 2 games of the series.
We're ahead 2-0. That's what it's about.
But in Chicago, the Bulls beat Miami in Game 3 and 4, tying the series at 2. Then in Game 5, Dwayne Wade turned it on, even through an injury, and the Heat closed out the series in Game 6.
We always knew how to take care of business, and nothing fazed us. That's because we were 15 strong.
In the Eastern Conference semifinals, the Heat faced the New Jersey Nets and lost Game 1. The Heat did respond, and Dwayne Wade led Miami to 4 straight wins and finished off the New Jersey Nets with a Game 5 win at home.
Kidd, bounce pass, intercepted by Wade, and that's the ball game. Miami is off to the Eastern Conference Championship.
For the second year in a row, Miami was in the Eastern Conference Finals and matched up against the 2-time defending conference champions, Detroit Pistons.
We felt that we could have beat them last year, so we were waiting for that challenge all year.
The Pistons had home court advantage, but Miami opened the series with a 5-point win at the Palace.
Wade gets by him. Beautiful move.
In Game 2, Detroit won by 4, sending the series back to Miami even.
Dribble drive the lane. Wade throws it up. Got it to go. Greatness right here in Dwayne Wade.
Back at home, Miami won both games to take a 3-1 series lead. But the Pistons stayed alive, winning Game 5 in Detroit, sending the series back to the Heat's house for an unforgettable 6th game. On June 2nd, 1 win away from the NBA Finals, the Heat seized the moment and the series.
You just had the feeling that this Heat team was not going to let this chance go by.
Jason Williams rose to the occasion, hitting his first 10 shots.
Jay Will played great, started the game off on fire, and everyone picked up on that energy.
We did it all year long, it was somebody different each night, stepping up.
For the first time in this franchise's history, 18 years in the league, the Miami Heat are off to the NBA championship.
The most exhilarating moment in franchise history were those white seat coverings raining, snowing down on the arena.
In the NBA Finals, Miami was matched against the Dallas Mavericks, who convincingly won the first 2 games at home and put the Heat in a hole that many thought they would not be able to climb out of.
We did not play well. Our best players didn't play their best. I didn't coach well enough. We made a lot of mistakes.
This is championship basketball, man. We got to start playing that way.
The very next day, I just started to look at the calendar. I said, when is the first possible day that we could win it?
He said, Tuesday night, June 20th, we're going to win the championship right here.
The series moved to Miami for the next 3 games, but all that mattered was Game 3. It was a must-win scenario for the Heat.
We weren't doing anything right.
in the whole game.
With 6.5 minutes left, down 13, I believe was definitely a defining moment in the history of the NBA.
I just remember coming back to the huddle and calling timeout. I just wrote on my blue clipboard, "This is our season, fellas. What are we going to do with it?" And Dwayne stood up and said,
"Nah, I ain't going out like this. I ain't going out like this. I ain't going out like this."
With Dwayne Wade scoring 15 of his 42 points in the fourth quarter, Miami battled back to tie the game, setting the stage for Gary Payton's dramatic jump shot.
Payton knocks it down.
That's the biggest shot to me in Heat franchise history.
And the Miami Heat right back in the NBA Finals.
Led by Wade, who averaged 40 points, Miami came back to win games 4 and 5.
And Miami wins the ball game and have a 3-2 lead in this series.
Heading back to Dallas for Game 6, Miami had its first ever chance to win an NBA championship.
Game 6 was our Game 7.
I packed one suit, one shirt, one tie.
In Game 6, the Mavericks played well early and led by 14 in the first quarter, but Miami remained poised for their final championship challenge.
What goes hot eventually goes to cold. We became masters of playing from behind.
Jason Terry leans in, Mourning with a block. He sent it out of bounds.
In a game that showcased the depth of Miami's heart and talent, the Heat, 15 strong, climbed to the NBA's mountaintop.
The long shot, rimmed out. Wade has got it. Wade will hold on. Miami has won. Miami is NBA champs. The Heat have won it. We're NBA champions. For the first time in franchise history, the promises have been kept. There'll be a parade down Biscayne Boulevard.
Well, there's two moments when you win a title. The moment is the instant that you win it. When Dwayne threw it to the heavens.
He throws the ball in the air, and you hear the horn go off, and I'm thinking, wow, it's over with. We won.
That moment when Dwayne threw the ball up in the air, it's indescribable, the euphoria that you feel.
That was the best feeling that I've felt in sports ever. I always wanted to throw the ball up in the air real high like that. Never got the opportunity to do it, so I said, this the time.
It's sort of like a dream come true. To win that game the way we won it was almost like sort of floating on a cloud, saying, did we really do this? Did this really happen?
I couldn't contain myself. I was screaming, I was singing, I was yelling, we are the champions, and it was my happiest, most proud moment of being an employee of the Miami Heat for these 20 years.
Congratulations, Miami Heat, 2006 NBA champions.
And then the other moment is the locker room.
It really hit me in the locker room, and the champagne started pouring, where the really emotions hit that we were champions. And as much as I'm happy for me, I'm really happy for we.
He's a world champion!
The whole process of winning that championship to me was a great promise that was finally delivered. And to see my colleagues celebrating was exciting to me.
The moment in the locker room that I will always remember, it's my favorite moment, was talking to Udonis Haslem.
It's like a 1,000-pound weight off my shoulders, man, because nobody never gave me a chance.
I remember coming up short and being so disappointed. All of that just flashed through my mind, So the emotions of those moments and understanding where we were before and where we are now just puts things in perspective. It just makes you enjoy this moment even more.
The Heat won their first game in the 18th game, and they won the NBA championship in their 18th season.
Inside the Heat is brought to you by your South Florida Mercedes-Benz dealers. Love what you drive.
Welcome back to Inside the Heat. The 2006 NBA champions began the defense of their title with a very special opening night ceremony where they did receive their championship rings and raise the organization's first ever championship banner.
There you go. That's what it's all about right there. That's what we work for.
Miami's opening night would be spoiled as the Bulls handed the Heat one of their worst regular season losses ever, and it trickled right into the season. With a 500 record, things got even worse just after the All-Star break when Dwayne Wade suffered a devastating shoulder injury. He rejoined his teammates just in time for the postseason.
Welcome back, Dwayne.
Miami won 44 games and captured their 7th division title. but got swept by the Chicago Bulls in the first round of the 2007 playoffs.
It just teaches you again and again about the NBA and how fast it can bring you up to great heights and bring you to your knees, like the next day.
Going into their 20th season, Miami's roster would change significantly. The Heat acquired Ohio State guard Daquan Cook in the 2007 NBA draft and traded for Ricky Davis and Mark Blount. However, they parted ways with James Posey, Jason Capono, Gary Payton, and Antoine Walker. With Dwayne Wade recovering from off-season surgery and Alonzo Mourning suffering a season-ending injury, Miami struggled right from the very start of the 07-08 season and would fall out of playoff contention by mid-year.
We've got some breaking news concerning the Miami Heat, concerning Shaq. Is he going to go or stay?
He is not only going to go, he is gone. It is official. Shaq traded to Phoenix.
Myself, Mr. and Mr. Harrison, and the Heat family want to wish Shaquille O'Neal nothing but the best.
The good news is, though, the Heat are younger and faster thanks to the arrival of the Matrix, not the movie, the player, Sean Marion.
He wasn't just a guy that we traded Shaquille for. We want him to be part of the culture here and the core of players here for a long time.
It has been an amazing and unique 20 years. 2 decades removed from a dream that caught fire, the Miami Heat's journey went from an expansion team to a championship team.
It's just been a lot of fun, and it wouldn't have been possible without the Miami Heat, Pat Riley, and what the Heat and the NBA family has meant to our family.
The word family, means so much, to all of us. We've been through a lot of the good times and a lot of the bad times together.
When people say P.J. Brown, they remember me with the Miami Heat. It was just a great experience. I enjoyed every moment of it.
You're a part of that foundation, of that dirt that had to be turned over to get to a certain point. That's a heck of an honor.
I'll always consider myself a Miami Heat player. Made some great friends from the organization and just in the community.
I consider myself to be Heat for life. Came in with the Heat, and I'm gonna go out with the Heat.
To see a Ronnie Cycli or a Tim Hardaway, I look around and I was like, wow, I'm a part of that puzzle.
Playing in front of great people, giving them joy while I play, and playing for a guy like Pat Riley, it was great. I enjoyed every minute of it. This is a beautiful organization run by Mr. Riley. A lot of great things done here.
To have been part of the vehicle that changed the shape of a community that I love. I think that I am one of the luckiest people in the world.
I still consider the Miami Heat my team because I was one of the first players there. So when they won the championship, I felt like I won the championship as well.
It meant a lot to me to come to Miami and be the first pick ever. It all hit me basically when they won the championship. It means so much more today than it did in the past.
It's a great sense of satisfaction, great sense of pride. It's a reminder of all the years.
We worked just as hard when we were 0-17 as when we were champions because of our loyalty and love for the Heat.
I always dreamed of winning the championship. I always dreamed of the champagne, getting poured on people's heads.
To watch our owner, Mickey Arison, who was committed from the start, be able to build a championship organization, to see Coach Riley put another ring on his finger and to see that championship come to a reality.
I'm glad I made the decision to come here and be a part of this franchise. I have nothing but great memories here. Even the memories that people see as bad memories were great memories for me.
To give Mickey his ring and the Heat their rings, it conjured up for me a lot of memories, both of my mom and of Ted and the march of the franchise. It was a pretty emotional moment for me.
I think the Miami Heat is a great success story of men with vision, then men with championship vision, and then men with great talent that made that championship vision come into focus.
What's special about this is, it's going to outlive us all. You're building something that's bigger than you, better than you, greater than you. It will outlast you. We'll be part of the history of what the Miami Heat was. We'll be part of the history of what the first 20 years was.
This organization is going to be around. It's going to continue to get better, and we're going to continue to play for championships every year.
You climb, you climb, you climb. You get to the mountaintop. When you get to the mountaintop, you can put your flag up there, but you don't get to camp out. You got to come back down again. You got to climb it again.